Chapter 1254. How could Lin Yu Laozu not see the situation he was in right now? It was just that the two early Dharma minor repairs that he was protecting behind him were the grand disciples of Luo Xine Laozu, who had saved his life when his own sect was destroyed. When he saved these two, Lin Yu Laozu already knew that it was too late for Luo Xine's sect. These two disciples that Luo Xine Laozu had risked her life to save were the last remnants of Luo Xine Laozu's legacy for the sect. Lin Yu Laozu naturally wanted to save the descendants of his old friend and benefactor. He had been a lone practitioner for most of his life and was now a pure young practitioner. However, he had never thought about starting a sect, nor had he ever wanted to rebuild his once destroyed sect to continue its legacy. However, when he saw these two grand disciples of his old friend, he could not help but want to help his old friend fulfill his wish to continue the legacy of his sect. Even when he was already in a dangerous situation, he still did not want to break out of the encirclement on his own. Instead, he tried his best to protect the two sons of his old friend behind him. Lin Yu Laozu naturally knew that his actions were actually playing into the hands of Juzi of the Five Elements. However, as he looked at the two juniors behind him who were still trying their best to attack the Five Elements formation in an attempt to reduce the pressure on him, Lin Yu Laozu could not help but laugh at himself. Ever since the day his sect was destroyed, he had never thought about carrying anything on his back. That was why he had been a lone practitioner, free to roam the world. As someone who could clearly distinguish between kindness and hatred, he could single-handedly find trouble with Wuxing School. However, even though he was now a pure young practitioner, he had never thought about leaving behind the legacy of his sect. But now, looking at the two little cultivators behind him shouldering the heavy burden of his old friend's entire sect, Patriarch Lin Yu suddenly realized that he had never thought of leaving anything behind since he came to this world. Perhaps he should have left something behind for his own sect, but he didn't know if he would have the chance to do so. It was too late in the end. At this moment, the Juzi of the Five Elements who were surrounding Lin Yu Laozu and the others suddenly became nervous. They could see that Lin Yu Laozu was acting strangely and thought that this pure young practitioner was finally going to abandon the two burdens and escape. They all became more vigilant, and the Five Elements formation spun even faster. The attacks between the Juzi also became more intense. Ancestor Lin Yu immediately returned to his senses. The Grade 1 Tribulation Spirit Treasure Jasper Wind Flute in his hand rapidly spun above his head. Every time it spun, a flute would separate from it. The clear jasper bagpipes spun 5 times in the air. Each of the 5 bagpipes emitted a strange sound that could penetrate one's mind as they spun. They split up into 5 different positions and stabilized the situation of the battle once again. This old fellow really had a trump card up his sleeve. Tu Gaoshan gritted his teeth. These pure young practitioners were not easy to deal with at all for Tu Gaoshan. Tu Gaoshan gave the other 4 people a look and suddenly threw an item into the Five Elements formation. Lin Yu Laozu did not know what this item was. Out of caution, he tried his best to avoid it. Unexpectedly, the item suddenly exploded in mid-air. 3 15- or 16-year-old children jumped out from it. After looking at the Five Elements formation for a while, they immediately joined forces to attack Tu Gaoshan. These were green sea snakes? Lin Yu Laozu was slightly stunned. Among the 3 green sea snakes in front of him, only the boy was a Dharma adept. The other 2 girls were only at the peak of the core forging stage. However, with the 3 of them working together, their strength was not any weaker than the 2 third-generation disciples of the Luo Xine sect. But why would there be green sea snakes? The moment Samling appeared, he attacked the Wuxing School. However, the Juzi of the Five Elements did not care. For people like Samling, or the 2 early Dharma adepts who were under Lin Yu Laozu's protection, they were not afraid of the Juzi of the Five Elements. The Five Elements formation was originally a method to defeat the strong with fewer people. On the contrary, the appearance of Samling increased the burden on Lin Yu Laozu once again. The moment Samling attacked, Lin Yu Laozu knew that these 3 children were basically asking for death. Lin Yu Laozu instinctively protected them. In mid-air, the green jade flute once again produced a flute shadow to protect Samling. Green sea snakes, what would happen if they died in the central plains? Tu Gaoshan had a sinister smile on his face, as if his plot had succeeded. He had some understanding of Lin Yu Laozu's character. Although Samling was very strong when they joined forces, their training was limited. No matter how strong they were, they would not be a threat to the Juzi of the five elements. On the contrary, once Lin Yu Laozu protected them, they would definitely delay Lin Yu Laozu again. As for the two early Dharma adepts from the Luo Xian sect, minor repairs, they were nothing to the Juzi of the five elements. From the very beginning, the Juzi of the five elements had wanted to deal with Lin Yu Laozu. The so-called killing of the Luo Xian sect members was just an excuse to divert Lin Yu Laozu's attention. Lin Yu Laozu looked up into the sky. The clouds in the sky flashed past, and the sunlight that was hiding behind them suddenly burst out. For a moment, even Lin Yu Laozu could not help but squint under the light. No, this was not sunlight. This was the light of a sword. Tu Gaoshan might not be the strongest among the five elements formation, but he was definitely the most difficult to deal with. Moreover, his cultivation was the highest. He even dared to say that he was invincible among his peers with his defensive magical power. This was very similar to his grandmaster, Earth Spiritual Sun Laozu. It was just that a month ago, Earth Spiritual Sun's defense was broken by Xiao Baiyu's peerless swordsmanship and he was injured. Today, Lu Ping's thin water-flowing sword also turned one sword into 10,000 swords. Even with the enhancement of the spiritual treasure in his hand, Tu Gaoshan's defensive magical power was shaken by the continuous sword lights. The level 2 spiritual treasure in Tu Gaoshan's hand was personally bestowed by his grandmaster, Earth Spiritual Sun. Tu Gaoshan did not want to destroy the level 2 spiritual treasure in his hand because of this. Dodging and jumping, Tu Gaoshan was forced to temporarily leave the position he occupied by Lu Ping's sword light. However, it was not so easy to sit back down. Fortunately, Tu Gaoshan seemed to have sensed the strength of the person who was coming. Before he retreated to the position, he quickly shouted, "The formation can't hold on any longer. Be careful." Lin Yu Laozu was very experienced. Just as Tu Gaoshan was dodging and jumping, he had already sensed the weakness of the formation. He continuously attacked the 4 Juzi on the field. As for the other 4 Juzi, because the Earth's spiritual sun was missing, the interlocking 5 elements formation suddenly became much weaker because of the lack of Tu Gaoshan. Lin Yu Laozu took the opportunity to break through the attacks of the 4 Juzi and killed his way out of the 5 elements formation. Behind him, the 2 early Dharma adepts from the Luo Xian sect and the Samling came out one after another. Without the 5 elements formation, the 4 Juzi did not dare to entangle with Lin Yu Laozu anymore. They could only hide in front of Lu Ping and Tu Gaoshan and make a defensive posture, waiting for the storm to come. However, the counterattack they imagined did not appear at all. Instead, there was a sudden scream from the battle between Lu Ping and Tu Gaoshan, which seemed to be Tu Gaoshan's own voice. The other 4 Juzi were shocked. When the person came, although they did not see his face clearly, the surging aura around him made them think that he was just a cultivator of the same level. Between cultivators of the same level, who in Wuxing School was afraid of. However, just as Samling followed Lin Yu Laozu out of the 5 elements formation, Samling all sniffed as if he had discovered something. Then Lu Hai shouted, "Father, is that you? Are you here to save us?" At the same time, Shui Jiro and Mu Chongxing also seemed to recognize the face of the person in front of them. "Lu Tianping, he is Lu Tianping of Beihai." Shui Jiro shouted at the crowd, but it was too late. Chapter 1255. The newcomer was Lu Tianping, the North Sea Celestial of Sword, who had traveled in Middle-earth for decades and earned the title of the number 1 cultivator of the 3rd generation. Tu Gaoshan's heart sank. If it were someone else, he would definitely scoff at this title. Number 1 cultivator of the 3rd generation? Had he asked for the title? However, when Lu Tianping escaped from Wuxing School's pursuit at Qingming River, he was the guy who calmly retreated and injured one of them when he was surrounded by 2 great cultivators and attacked by Mu Chongxing from the side. Such accomplishments were accomplished by the great cultivators of the 5 elements sect as foils, and this couldn't be faked at all. No matter how indignant Tu Gaoshan was, he knew that it was absolutely impossible for him to accomplish such a feat under those circumstances. Lu Tianping slashed out with his sword, and countless sword lights drew a long shadow in the sky, charging toward Tu Gaoshan one after another. They forced him away from the fifth earth position of the five elements formation and forced him to keep retreating. The sudden attacks that were like a violent storm made it hard for him to breathe. Even though he was retreating all the way, he couldn't catch his breath at all. The person in front of him seemed to have a true essence that was as thick as the sea, and when it was being operated, it was like a surging river that flowed endlessly. The sword techniques and divine abilities that were like a waterfall were pouncing on him, one after another. Soon, Tu Gaoshan felt like his body was filled with dense sword light. These sword lights all revolved around him. From afar, the sword lights around Tu Gaoshan had formed a huge ball of sword light. Tu Gaoshan couldn't move at all. He could only rely on his defensive magic to protect himself. Tu Gaoshan could feel that the sword lights around him were like fish taking advantage of his weakness. As long as he revealed even the slightest flaw, the sword lights would immediately bite and tear at him, constantly widening the gap until the defensive magic was completely destroyed. The serial killing technique suddenly changed into the stone-piercing sword technique, then into the raging waves slapping shore sword technique, then into the thousand piles of snow sword technique, and the sword lights that he managed to block with great difficulty intertwined into the seeping sword technique. One after another, Lu Ping cast the great techniques and sword techniques with ease. He had never felt this way before. There were no longer any restraints in his sword techniques, and he could always cast the most suitable and sharp sword techniques at the most opportune time. Lu Ping's sword techniques and sword techniques were no longer restricted. He could cast them at will, but he could always cast the most suitable and sharpest sword techniques at the most opportune time. From the beginning to the end, Lu Ping had not performed any supreme divine ability. However, these great divine abilities of swordsmanship combined at will, waiting for the right opportunity to be launched. Tu Gaoshan, who had even performed the supreme divine ability, was out of breath. Lu Ping knew that at this moment, the divine abilities of swordsmanship were no longer limited to one form in his eyes. His understanding of the divine abilities of swordsmanship had once again broken through a bottleneck and entered a whole new realm. Tu Gaoshan, the tortoise shell, became the best practice target for Lu Ping at this time. As a result, Lu Ping immediately began to consolidate his swordsmanship after entering this new realm. However, the price he paid was that Tu Gaoshan was completely suppressed by Lu Ping. As the first heir of Wuxing School, he was now completely suppressed by Lu Ping and had no power to fight back. Such an unimaginable thing happened in front of the other four Juzi. What? This is impossible. Hua the Infinitude screamed. He turned into a ball of fire and was about to crash into Lu Ping. Hua the Infinitude was also a proud person. He and Tu Gaoshan used the Juzi of the five elements, one attacking and the other defending. Usually, when they fought, neither of them could do anything to the other. In Hua the Infinitude's eyes, the real experts among the third generation of cultivators in the world of cultivation were only on par with the two of them. Tu Gaoshan's fighting style meant that he could only be a stepping stone. Tu Gaoshan must be the one with the strongest defense among the third generation of cultivators. As long as he could defeat Tu Gaoshan one day and use this stepping stone to ascend, no one in the third generation of cultivators in the world of cultivation would be able to stop his attacks. However, before Hua the Infinitude could grow to the point where he could suppress Tu Gaoshan, this North Sea swordsman in front of him could actually beat Tu Gaoshan to the point where he could not fight back with the continuous great divine swordsmanship. This huge psychological gap immediately drove Hua the Infinitude crazy. He rushed forward desperately, wanting to prove that all this was fake. This was because the absolute power that Lu Ping had displayed made him feel suffocated. Hua the Infinitude's cultivation was already one step away from the late Dharma stage. He knew that no matter how hard he worked, he would most likely not be able to reach the level of Lu Ping before he reached the late Dharma stage. He would rather not believe that all this was not real. He wanted to join forces with Tu Gaoshan to completely tear this minor repairs, who came from the poorest place in the world of cultivation, into pieces. This kind of person should not have appeared in the world of cultivation, especially not in such a poor place as the North Sea. However, Lin Yu Laozu was a dignified pure yang. Previously, Laozu had almost been trapped by a few minor repairs, who were 2 generations younger than him. As a pure young adept, where could he put his face? Now that he had broken out of the formation, there was actually someone who dared to look down on him. This time, no matter how good-tempered Lin Yu Laozu was, he was enraged. With a ya-ya sound from his mouth, Hua the Infinitude, who had just flown into midair, suddenly swayed as if he was drunk. An intense pain came from his divine consciousness, causing Hua the Infinitude to roar in midair like a mad beast. If the other 3 Juzi had not sensed that something was wrong and hurriedly joined forces to surround and attack Lin Yu Laozu, who knew whether Hua the Infinitude, a direct descendant of the Holy Land of Wuxing School, would have gone crazy just like that. Shui Jiro and the others were immediately suppressed by Lin Yu Laozu, who had been freed up. If Lin Yu Laozu's injuries were not so severe, he would not have been able to fight against the 4 minor repairs, who had already lost the support of the formation until now. At this moment, Lin Yu Laozu could actually retreat with the burden beside him, and the 4 Juzi of the 5 elements would definitely not be able to stop him. However, at this moment, Lu Ping was still fighting happily on the other side. With Lin Yu Laozu's insight, he could naturally see that Lu Ping was entering a rare state of epiphany. If Lu Ping had not saved him just now, Lin Yu Laozu would definitely be in an extremely sorry state when he was trapped in the 5 elements formation. At this moment, he naturally would not leave. Instead, he restrained the other 4 Juzi, preventing them from destroying Lu Ping's current epiphany. Seeing that the situation had turned in an instant, Shui Jiro did not know how to get out of the predicament she was in. She turned her eyes and saw Samling and the others on the other side. So she hurriedly shouted, "Kill these minor repairs!" Huo Wuliang, Mu Changsheng, and Jin Jirue, who had calmed down from the madness, all understood. While they were trying their best to hold off Lin Yu Laozu, they attacked the 2 cultivators from Luo Xian sect and Samling. Samling had a tacit understanding between them, and they had many treasures left behind by Lu Ping, so they could actually block one of the attacks. However, the other 2 cultivators from Luo Xian sect were not so lucky, and they were directly blasted away by Huo Wuliang's fire soaring. At this moment, the 2 of them finally understood that the gap between them and the ruler of the 5 elements was actually so great, and it was even to the extent that they couldn't even withstand a casual attack from one of the ruler of the 5 elements. Both of them weren't stupid, so they naturally immediately understood that they'd become a burden to Ancestor Lin Yu in the 5-element formation earlier, and they weren't taken seriously by the ruler of the 5 elements at all. Another loud roar came from the sky. At this moment, 2 Gaoshan had been surrounded by Lu Ping's swordsmanship like a ball of sword light, and it was also at this moment that the change happened. The sword lights surrounding 2 Gaoshan were the sword lights left behind by Lu Ping's swordsmanship during this period of time. However, these sword lights seemed to have a life of their own. They did not dissipate after Lu Ping's next swordsmanship. Instead, they were densely packed like piranhas, nailing onto 2 Gaoshan's defensive swordsmanship. It was enough to make one's scalp go numb. At this moment, Lu Ping's swordsmanship changed again. The 2 swords of the thin water unstoppable sword circled, and the 129,600 sword lights and the densely packed sword lights around 2 Gaoshan moved at the same time. The originally aimless sword lights seemed to have been set up by Lu Ping. The moment the 100 rivers run into the sea was activated, these loose sword lights suddenly became the foundation of Lu Ping's swordsmanship. Sword formation, it was a sword formation. From the beginning, any of Lu Ping's great swordsmanship was a setup. 2 Gaoshan had unknowingly been surrounded by the sword formation that Lu Ping had set up inadvertently. The sword lights that seemed to dissipate on their own revealed their fangs at this moment. Under the leadership of the thin water unstoppable sword, they formed a perfect trap that directly trapped 2 Gaoshan in the center of the sword formation. The 100 rivers run into the sea. At this moment, Lu Ping's control of the supreme swordsmanship had finally reached the realm of great success. The 100 rivers run into the sea was not just a huge whirlpool of swordsmanship that could be used to strangle all opponents. It was also a supreme swordsmanship that could contain all the swordsmanship in the world for one's own use. It was the highest goal of the 2 supreme swordsmanships of the North Sea 12 orthodox techniques. When the water ape called out Jiao Dorn's inheritance when he killed the cauldron of heaven and earth, Lu Ping already knew that whether it was the 100 rivers run into the sea or the changing seas into mulberry fields, they were the means that Jiao Daoren had used to create the world. They were the true divine powers of creation. Tu Gaoshan, who was trapped by Lu Ping's sword array, was like a boiled egg that was easily peeled off layer by layer in the face of the sea of 100 rivers. In the end, Tu Gaoshan could only let out an unwilling and fearful roar before he abruptly stopped moving. The first heir disciple of Wuxing School had fallen. Chapter 1256. The fact that Tu Gaoshan was torn apart so easily by Lu Ping completely shocked the other 4 Juzi. Lin Yu Laozu was a little flustered when he attacked the 2 cultivators from Luo Xian sect and Samling. The 4 Juzi looked at each other with fear in their eyes. Suddenly, Mu Changxing shouted, "Retreat!" The 4 of them used the trump cards that they were most proud of in their lives. At this moment, no one wanted to hold anything back. The supreme magical powers that they had carefully honed, and with the help of the spiritual treasures that Wuxing School had prepared for them, they smashed toward Lin Yu Laozu and the people who were protecting him. Lin Yu Laozu was an arrow at the end of its flight, so he did not dare to face the madness of these people head-on. He swung the breeze flute in his hand, and a wave of air blew the 4 people hundreds of feet away. Lin Yu Laozu's feet flashed, and he managed to avoid the desperate magical powers that the 4 people used to cover his retreat. However, his surging qi and blood were like a volcano that was about to erupt in his body. However, Lin Yu Laozu was a pure young cultivator after all. He would not let these juniors run wild in front of him. The breeze flute in his hand seemed to have caught something in the air. He suddenly flicked the spiritual treasure in his hand, and Hua the Infinitude, who was flying in front of him, suddenly cried out in pain and fell from the sky. Shui Jiro and Jin Jirue were shocked. They hurriedly carried Hua the Infinitude to the left and right, and flew all the way while Mu Changxing stayed behind to cover their retreat. When he saw that Lin Yu Laozu had gotten up to chase after them, he turned around and chased after the other 3. Ancestor Lin Yu, whose face was pale, finally suppressed the blood in his heart with great difficulty, but he was still injured on top of his injuries in the end. However, when he raised his head to look at the person who had trapped and killed Tu Gaoshan earlier, he discovered that the person had suddenly disappeared. Although the spiritual treasure in Tu Gaoshan's hand was only a first tribulation spiritual treasure, it was a rock shield that mainly focused on defense. Tu Gaoshan himself was famous for being as immovable as a mountain, and most of his magical powers were focused on defense. However, after Lu Ping gained a deeper understanding of swordsmanship, the thin water flow sword, which was also a first tribulation spirit treasure, shredded Tu Gaoshan and the first tribulation spirit treasure into pieces with the 100 rivers flow into the sea sword array. At this moment, Lu Ping was in the mood to comprehend his swordsmanship. He was filled with killing intent and wanted to use Tu Gaoshan to practice his swordsmanship. Tu Gaoshan, who only knew how to defend himself, couldn't satisfy Lu Ping's desire to practice his swordsmanship. Lu Ping, who was paying close attention to the battle on the other side, immediately saw the other 4 retreating the moment Tu Gaoshan fell. Mu Changxing. This person was once saved by Lu Ping and Su Jin in the Land of 5 Elements, but he almost made Lu Ping suffer a great loss outside the Qingming River. In order to neutralize his vibrant fallen leaves spell, Lu Ping even wasted half a portion of the myriad wonder dew. A blue light flashed and Tu Gaoshan's storage mystic instrument flew into Lu Ping's hand. Then, he pointed his other hand at the cyan light from afar. Mu Changxing, who was flying, felt a chill in his heart. He suddenly felt that he was being stared at, and all the hair on his body stood up. Suddenly, he seemed to notice something, and he reached out to grab a handful of flowers from the flower basket and threw them forward. A shower of flowers fell in front of him. As the rain of flowers fell, nearly a third of the petals fell in the space 10 feet in front of Mu Changxing, but they strangely made a turn, as if they were attracted by something. A blue flying sword covered in petals suddenly appeared 10 feet in front of Mu Changxing, but Mu Changxing was already prepared. He casually plucked a green leaf from the flower basket, and it immediately turned into a wooden shield to block the Watergloom sword. The Watergloom sword shook, and the petals attached to the sword were immediately shattered by the sword chi. The water-gloom sword disappeared into the void after missing its target. Mu Changxing's expression was solemn, and he was about to fly away again when the space in front of him split open again. A purple halo rushed out of the space, smashing towards Mu Changxing's head. It was telekinesis, and it was continuous telekinesis even after the aftermath of the battle. Mu Changxing knew very well who had attacked, and why this person had targeted him. Before the purple halo could hit Mu Changxing, it was covered by the falling leaves and petals, unable to advance any further. But before Mu Changxing could breathe a sigh of relief, the purple halo suddenly shook, and another halo separated from it, then fell towards Mu Changxing's head. The bracelets were originally a pair of jade bracelets, but Lu Ping had combined them to block Mu Changxing's attack. Now that Mu Changxing's attack was blocked, the bracelets suddenly split apart. Although the bracelets still couldn't hurt Mu Changxing, they were enough to catch him off guard. Telekinesis was continuous telekinesis. Even a monstrous existence like Lu Ping could not guarantee that the numinous treasure would be able to unleash a fraction of its power. Against someone like Mu Changxing, it was already very rare for it to be able to slightly delay his escape. In Lu Ping's eyes, it was very normal for Mu Changxing to be able to dodge this hidden attack, and it was exactly what he had calculated. After being continuously attacked by Lu Ping's spatial abilities, Mu Changxing had unknowingly deviated from the direction of the other three Juzi. Mu Changxing's heart sank. He saw that Lu Ping had already taken the opportunity to catch up with him on his two flying swords. The pair of flying swords under his feet shot out, and a sword torrent crashed towards Mu Changxing's back like a falling river. After Lu Ping cultivated the Sea of 100 Rivers to the greater success stage, he felt like he could cast the great river flows east at will. Not only that, but the power of the great river flows east had also increased again. Lu Ping could even use the Sea of All Rivers sword art to reverse engineer it. He had a hunch that it wouldn't be long before he could push the brand new Great River Flowing East sword art to the level of Supreme God Power. This was a Supreme God Power sword technique that he had created after improving it. In the cultivation world, only pure young cultivators could create Supreme God Powers. After witnessing Lu Ping's sword technique that killed two Gaoshan like peeling an egg, Mu Changxing was already frightened by Lu Ping's sword technique. Seeing that the surging sword torrent was catching up to him, Mu Changxing scattered a handful of seeds from the flower basket without thinking. Then, the seeds absorbed the surrounding water vapor in midair, and even the clouds around him became a lot lighter. After the seeds absorbed enough water in an instant, vines broke out from the seeds and began to grow. Then, they waved behind Mu Changxing and collided with the torrent of sword techniques that were coming at him. Taking advantage of the moment when the great river flowing east sword art was blocked, countless branches, vines, petals, and green leaves flew out of the flower basket in Mu Changxing's hand and formed a door in front of him. Mu Changxing stepped into it and immediately disappeared. Then, the branches and leaves that formed the door began to wither and eventually became withered flowers and willows that scattered in midair. The waving vines were quickly harvested by the sword torrent. Lu Ping stood at the head of the tide and looked at the door that Mu Changxing had left through. He smiled and said, "It's really interesting." Then, the sword torrent under his feet stretched out in midair, forming a sword bridge across the void. On the other side of the sword bridge, it went deep into the void, leading to an unknown place. In a forest dozens of miles away, several big trees with entangled branches and leaves suddenly moved without any wind. The branches and leaves that were stuck together slowly retracted, forming a simple arched door. A green light curtain hung down, and Mu Changxing immediately tore the light curtain and walked out of the simple door. That was close. Lu Tianping's strength has grown so fast. Mu Changxing breathed a sigh of relief with lingering fear. The two giant trees that formed the spatial door behind him had lost their vitality and were rapidly withering. The branches and leaves on the trees had also begun to rustle and fall. But before he could completely relax, the two withering trees behind him suddenly turned into wood splinters amidst a series of crackling sounds. A bridge of sword light followed closely behind Mu Changxing, tearing through the space behind him. Mu Changxing jumped up like a frightened rabbit. He turned around and tried to escape without thinking. Lu Ping, who was behind him, stepped on the sword bridge and walked out of the spatial door. He looked around and said with a smile, "This is a good place for you." Mu Changxing knew that this fight was inevitable, so he didn't say anything. Fortunately, he had considered this when he had decided to exert his space magic to come here. The forest was dense, and it was indeed an area where Mu Changxing could exert his strength to the fullest. "Brother Lu, why are you so aggressive? Although I don't want to bully people with the power of my school, if I act like this, I will bring trouble to my school." Lu Ping sneered and said, "Tu Gaoshan has already died at my hands. Will the Wuxing school let me go?" Mu Changxing was silent, but he held the flower basket tighter in his hand. Lu Ping didn't waste any more words with him. The thin water-flowing sword cut the numerous branches in front of Mu Changxing into pieces. But Mu Changxing had already disappeared into the forest. However, as Lu Ping sneered, a painful groan came from dozens of feet away. The ghostly water sword had pierced through a tree trunk as thick as a bucket, and Mu Changxing's figure was slowly revealed. He had been nailed to the tree trunk by the ghostly water sword that Lu Ping had prepared. Lu Ping had already calculated Mu Changxing's next move when he had exerted his space magic to chase him into the forest. The ghostly water sword had already circled behind him while Lu Ping was talking to him. Mu Changxing had never expected that Lu Ping's divine will was much stronger than his, and that Lu Ping could even multitask when facing an opponent like him. What a pity. If you had the courage to fight with me, you wouldn't have been defeated so quickly. Lu Ping walked forward slowly. The thin water-flowing sword was already pointed at Mu Changxing, completely blocking all his escape routes. Chapter 1257. However, at this moment, Lu Ping frowned slightly. He saw a hint of coldness flash through Mu Changxing's eyes. Immediately, Lu Ping sensed many things and stopped in his tracks. Instead of advancing, he retreated. A bell that looked like a giant bell fell from the sky and almost covered Lu Ping. Rain bell. Shui Jiro had arrived. Lu Ping stretched out his hand, and the water ghost sword was pulled out of Mu Changxing's body. He wanted to stab again, but unfortunately, Mu Changxing did not give him the chance. He immediately used the wood escape technique and appeared beside Shui Jiro. Lu Ping secretly sighed. The thin water, unstoppable sword sprinkled sword light all around him, defending Lu Ping's body. Immediately, a wave of sword light flew towards Lu Ping. Suddenly, a dense sound rang out around Lu Ping's body. Jin Jirui's sneak attack had no chance of success against the seeping sword technique. Lu Ping made a quick decision. He turned around and retreated without the slightest hesitation. It was a small matter that Shui Jiro and Jin Jirui came to help, but the five elements Juzi had clearly used a secret technique to inform the great cultivators of Wuxing School. At this time, Hu Wuliang, who had been seriously injured by Lin Yu Laozu, was not around. Obviously, Shui Jiro and the others had already met up with the reinforcements. At this time, they were either cutting off his own path of retreat, rushing towards Lin Yu Laozu, or both. No matter which one it was, Lu Ping could not stay here any longer. Unfortunately, it was a moment too late. Otherwise, Mu Changxing would definitely die without a burial place. Lu Ping's feet flashed, and he was already dozens of feet away. However, Jin Jirui and Shui Lingzi were still chasing after him. At this time, Lu Ping's divine sense had already detected the auras of two great cultivators coming in his direction. In front of him, Jin Jirui and Shui Jiro rushed towards him like crazy. Even Mu Changxing, whose shoulder had been pierced by Lu Ping, endured the pain and struggled to help the two of them to stop Lu Ping from leaving. The rain bell rang. Not far away, Lu Ping, who was about to flash behind a giant tree, could not help but slow down. Jin Jirui was delighted. In a flash, his figure had already turned into a sharp light and slashed towards Lu Ping. Mu Changxing's eyes flickered. He seemed to have sensed something wrong and hurriedly said, "Be careful, it's a trap." As soon as Mu Changxing's voice fell, Jin Jirui's light slash had already broken through Lu Ping's body. However, the body in front of him turned into a pool of water and splashed. Jin Jirui was stunned. At this time, Mu Changxing's shout came from behind. Jin Jirui knew something was wrong. He tiptoed, and wanted to retreat. At the same time, he was ready to deal with any possible attack with the spiritual treasure in his hand. However, until Jin Jirue and Mu Chongqing and the others met, Lu Ping did not attack again. At this time, 2 escape lights descended from the sky. The 3 Juzi hurriedly came forward to greet them. One of the great cultivators frowned slightly after hearing the 3's words. He swept the surroundings with his divine sense and said, "Don't look for him. He has already left." The other great cultivator said, "Let's chase after him. This person might be meeting up with Lin Yu Laozu. We can hurry over and join forces with senior brother Mu and senior brother Jin. Perhaps we can kill one of them." The 4 of them fled on the light. Shui Jiro wanted to say something but hesitated. In the end, she could not help but ask, "Martial uncles, how is senior brother Hua's injury?" The 2 great cultivators' expressions immediately darkened. The first great cultivator was clearly a little irritable. He said, "Xiao Hua is crippled." Crippled? Shui Jiro and the other 2 were furious. Jin Jirue had the best relationship with Hua Wuliang. When he heard this, he could not help but say with an unusually emotional tone, "How can he be crippled?" Senior brother Hua was only injured by Lin Yu Laozu. He did not even faint. How can he be crippled? Hua Wuliang's questioning tone did not anger the 2 second-generation great cultivators. The other great cultivator explained, "It's not that he's crippled. It's just that Lin Yu Laozu has a very strange supreme magical power that specifically targets one's divine sense. It seems to be an ancient inheritance that is specially made to imitate the magical power of the devil-devouring soul. It is the most difficult to defend against. Xiaohua's divine sense is damaged, and there is basically no possibility of recovery. I'm afraid his cultivation will only be at the mid-Dharma stage for the rest of his life." The 3 Juzi of Wuxing School did not know what to say. Compared to their arrogance, Hua Wuliang's situation was indeed no different from being crippled. They did not expect that 2 of the 5 Juzi of Wuxing School, who were famous in the cultivation world, had been defeated in one day, and another had been pierced by a sword. If it were not for the fact that reinforcements had arrived early, perhaps 3 of the 5 Juzi of Wuxing School would have been lost today. This was all caused by Lu Tianping of the North Sea. The veins on Mu Chongqing's forehead bulged. Besides being furious, another half of it was fear. He was clearly aware of Lu Tianping's strength, and he didn't want to experience the feeling of Lu Tianping nailing him to the tree with that elusive sword strike a second time. "Uncle Master, that Lu Tianping is only from a medium-sized school in the North Sea. How dare he?" Mu Chongqing said tentatively. The first great cultivator glanced at Mu Chongqing and said, "Now that our school is like a big tree that attracts the wind, and the North Sea is far away and closed off, it's not a good idea to act recklessly." Mu Chongqing's face turned red. He knew that his uncle master had seen through his thoughts, so he nodded and said no more. At this moment, they passed through a thick cloud in mid-air. For a moment, they felt like they were in a dream, as if they were immortals. However, they did not care and just continued to fly. They did not notice that the cloud around them was getting thicker and thicker, and it had already covered their figures. However, their divine thoughts were not affected in the cloud, so they did not care. They just wanted to meet up with the 2 great cultivators from Wuxing School who were trying to stop Lin Yu Laozu as soon as possible. The other great cultivator said that Jinling has a great influence in the North Sea now. It is a school that will soon be promoted to a large school. This time, all the cultivators in the world are gathering in Jiuquan. I heard that Jinling has also sent a cultivator here. If we take this opportunity to kill him in the battle against Mara without anyone knowing, we can avoid people's attention." Mu Chongqing's eyes lit up, but then it was as if he had seen something terrifying. His pupils suddenly widened, and he wanted to say something. Unexpectedly, when he opened his mouth was filled with bloody foam and pieces of internal organs. As soon as the other great cultivator finished speaking, a low voice suddenly resounded by Mu Chongqing's ears. As expected, "You really can't be allowed to live." How could Mu Chongqing not know that this was the voice of Lu Tianping of the North Sea who had left earlier? He did not leave. How did he avoid the detection of so many people? Mu Chongqing's mind raced, and he opened his mouth to shout. Unexpectedly, he felt a chill from the back of his heart. A sharp blade had pierced into Mu Changsheng's heart. Then, the sharp blade suddenly twisted, and Mu Changsheng could clearly feel the space in his heart shattering. His vitality was rapidly flowing out of his body. He suddenly opened his hands as if he wanted to grab something, but in the end, he could only let out a shrill scream. "Senior brother Mu!" Shueijiro cried out in alarm. She stretched out her hand to catch Mu Changsheng's falling body, but she heard the two great cultivators next to her shout, "You scoundrel!" The two great cultivators were both shocked and furious. They swept past Shueijiro and pounced on the assassin who had killed Mu Changsheng. But this way, Shueijiro could not catch Mu Changsheng. His body fell to the ground, and blood flowed out of his mouth as he fell, forming a long line of blood in the air. His eyes were wide open as he stared at the sky, but he was no longer alive. How could it be? How could it be that Lu Tianping did not leave, but was lurking around them? But how did he avoid the detection of the two great cultivators? How could Lu Tianping kill people under the noses of the two great cultivators without them noticing? Thinking about it, Lu Tianping had only come for Mu Changsheng this time. If he had come for Shueijiro and Jinjiruwei, they would not have been able to escape from Lu Ping's assassination. Shueijiro and Jinjiruwei did not immediately stop Lu Ping with the two great cultivators, but when they looked at each other, they understood each other's thoughts. A chill rose in their hearts, and they desperately suppressed this fear. Bang! Bang! There were two loud sounds in succession, and the clouds in the surroundings suddenly churned, and then there was no more sound. The two spirit treasures, the rain bell and the golden Rue saber, were taken out by the two, but they did not immediately cooperate with the two great cultivators to chase after Lu Tianping. Instead, they first protected each other, and then carefully chased after the two great cultivators. In the end, the two great cultivators found nothing. Lu Tianping, who was hiding in the clouds in the air, suddenly seemed to have disappeared. No matter how the two great cultivators searched, they could not find any trace of him. This time, not only Shueijiro and Jinjiruwei, but also the two great cultivators began to feel scared. With Lu Ping's stealthy assassination method and his astonishing strength, which was comparable to that of a great cultivator, it did not seem difficult for him to assassinate a great Dharma adept. When Shueijiro and Jinjiruwei rushed over, one of the great cultivators finally thought of something and said, "This cloud is strange. Let's get out of here quickly." Shueijiro and Jinjiruwei secretly breathed a sigh of relief, and the conveyance light under their feet immediately sped up. Knowing that they had rushed out of the cloud, they did not stop at all, and when they disappeared into the horizon, the four of them left in a hurry like stray dogs. Cough, cough, hastily defending against the two great cultivators' attacks. Even someone as strong as Lu Ping's qi and blood churned for a moment, and he suffered some internal injuries. I didn't expect that we could really avoid them. Of course. A giant praying mantis walked back and forth on Lu Ping's shoulder and said, "Why don't you take a look at your background? As long as there is water, you can avoid everyone's detection. Otherwise, how could you escape from the foot of Luo Xian Mountain back then? If the water transformation divine talisman can't even cover your tracks, how could Taoish Chan, the ancestor of the assassins, be so fearful of the other six Laozu even though he is the weakest among the heaven-opening seventh patriarch?" Chapter 1258. Of the 5 great disciples of Wuxing School, 2 were dead and 1 was crippled. 2 of them were killed by Lu Ping. Naturally, Lu Ping could imagine the anger of the entire Wuxing School. However, the 5 elemental sect was now completely isolated from the rest of the sect. They couldn't even fend for themselves, and the impact of the battle on Luo Xian Mountain was far-reaching. The 5 elemental sect would have to keep a low profile for a period of time. So Lu Ping wasn't afraid that the 5 elemental sect would run to the distant North Sea and cause trouble for Jinling's sect. Lu Ping was not worried that Lin Yu Laozu and the rest would be found. After all, they were pure young cultivators. If they did not even have this little bit of vigilance, they would not have survived until now. As expected, when Lu Ping sneaked to the place where the 5 great disciples of 5 elements attacked Lin Yu Laozu, there were no signs of another battle. The cultivators of Wuxing School were nowhere to be seen. They must have gone to other places to search. However, Lu Ping soon found the tracking mark that Samling had left behind. This was specially left by Samling for Lu Ping. At a call, Lu Ping met Lin Yulaozu again. Hee, old man has to thank you for your help. Otherwise, old man would have been in big trouble this time. I'm afraid the legacy of my old friend's sect would have been cut off. The two cultivators from Luo Xian sect blushed. At this moment, they naturally knew that if it were not for them, Lin Yulaozu would not have been trapped by the 5 great disciples of 5 elements, even if he was seriously injured. It could be said that Lu Ping had saved Lin Yulaozu, or the two of them. In fact, Lin Yulaozu had always been confident that he could escape unscathed. Luo Xian sect's Qin gang and Qin you thank Lu Daoyu for saving our lives. Senior, you must be joking. Brother Qin, please don't be like this. It's just a piece of cake. Besides, I have a grudge against the Wuxing school. A few demon cultivators who followed me were also captured by the Wuxing school. I have to save them no matter what. With that, Lu Ping bowed to Lin Yulaozu and said, I still have to thank Senior for your help in the Qingming River. Seeing the shock on Lin Yulaozu's face, Lu Ping hurriedly explained the whole story. Of course, Lu Ping naturally wouldn't say anything about Luo Xian Mountain. According to Lu Ping, when the water vein was shaken by the water ape artifact spirit, he was already thrown out. Lin Yulaozu couldn't help but be a little surprised. He didn't expect that he would have such a good karma with Lu Ping. He could only sigh at heaven's will. Hee, if I hadn't seen the minor repairs of the 3 green sea snakes, the old man wouldn't have known that Lu Xiaoyu is the North Sea water sword immortal who is famous in the entire cultivation world of the central mainland. You are the #1 cultivator among the 3 generations. Lin Yulaozu's praise made Lu Ping blush with shame. He quickly waved his hand and said, There are crouching tigers and hidden dragons in the central mainland. How can I be called the #1 cultivator? Senior, you are flattering me. The Samling had suffered a great disaster this time. Although they weren't abused by the Wuxing school because of their identity, the 3 of them had disobeyed Lu Ping's instructions after all. Lu Ping wanted to reprimand them and teach them a lesson. However, when Lu Linger saw Lu Ping, her face was already full of tears. Lu Ping had no choice but to change his cold face and comfort her with kind words. Now that the Samling had been found, Lu Ping wanted to say goodbye to Lin Yulaozu and the others. However, when Lu Ping looked at Lin Yulaozu's face, he pondered for a moment and said, Senior, you are seriously injured. It seems that your injuries have worsened, and even your origin has suffered some damage. Lin Yulaozu's face showed a trace of surprise. Although his current strength was less than 20% or 30%, it was not difficult for someone to see that he was injured. It was rare for someone to see the severity of his injury. However, he didn't expect that Lu Ping could see the injury in his body at a glance. The injury to the origin made Lin Yulaozu's face slightly dim, but he still chuckled and said, I didn't expect that Lu Xiaoyu could see it. Lu Ping said seriously, Forgive me for being straightforward. If you don't recover from your injury as soon as possible, your strength will inevitably be affected. I'm afraid that I won't be able to make any progress in the future. Lin Yulaozu smiled bitterly and said, Even if my origin is not damaged, the old man will not be able to make any progress. Lu Ping was startled, but he still said, I know a few pill formulas that can heal pure young practitioners. If you have nothing to do, why don't you wait for a couple of days? I'll refine them for you. This time, not only did Lin Yulaozu look surprised, Qin Yu and Qin Gang, who were beside him, also widened their eyes. To be able to refine pills that could heal pure young practitioners, one must at least be a top pill refinement grandmaster. Lin Yulaozu was stunned and said, I didn't expect Lu Xiaoyu to be a pill refinement grandmaster. The old man has been disrespectful. However, the old man has recently been invited by Xiao Baiyu and has to make a trip to the 9 Mysteries Tower. I'm afraid it won't be good to delay. The 9 Mysteries Tower? Lu Ping was taken aback and asked, Has the evil Luo's encirclement been lifted? No, but the 9 Mysteries Tower has been besieged for more than a decade. As a sacred place, the cultivation world will naturally not sit back and do nothing. Mara's disaster is a disaster for the entire cultivation world. If there is a precedent, the cultivation world will be even more disunited. In the future, When fighting against Mara's invasion, the losses will be even greater. Lu Ping blinked his eyes. It was not that he did not agree with what Lin Yu Laozu said, but Lu Ping had heard about 8th Sister Zhu's incident in the cultivation world. He knew that Lin Yu Laozu was also a participant in the Battle of Luo Xian Mountain. So he said, then the incident of 8th Sister Zhu abandoning her allies and escaping alone is fake? From Lu Ping's point of view, if such a thing happened during the rescue of the Nine Mysteries Tower, it would definitely disappoint many cultivators. Who would dare to rescue the Nine Mysteries Tower? What if they were betrayed by 8th Sister Zhu and the others again? Lin Yu Laozu smiled bitterly and said, at the moment of life and death, no matter how selfish a person is, it is never too much. If Shimin Mingyu and 8th Sister Zhu had blocked Shui Lingzi's attack for Yuan Xiaotian, it was most likely that the three of them would be entangled by the pure Yang 5 disciples at the same time. 8th Sister Zhu abandoning Shimin Mingyu to escape alone is actually the same reason. Rather than both of them dying, it is better to escape alone. Seeing that Lu Ping's expression was still somewhat loyal, Lin Yu Laozu continued, in fact, whether it is us, Skyward Pavilion, or the Yuan clan, we all understand this principle. It is just that this behavior is ultimately not welcomed by others. Previously, the Yuan clan and Skyward Pavilion had a tacit understanding that this matter would at most be reduced to a small matter. At most, they would feel uncomfortable when they see each other in the future. However, now that this thin layer of paper has been poked through by Wuxing School, for the sake of their own reputation, they have no choice but to do something. However, the disaster of Mara is ultimately a great disaster. The Yuan clan, Skyward Pavilion, and the Nine Mysteries Tower are all great clans that have been passed down since the beginning of the world. Naturally, they will not fight to the death for a pure Yang. Lu Ping nodded. In the end, he understood Lin Yu Laozu's meaning. However, he heard Lin Yu Laozu say, however, 8th Sister Zhu was still criticized by the cultivation world this time. 8th Sister Zhu was also strong-willed. She even single-handedly charged into Mara's army that was besieging the Nine Mysteries Tower and brought out the corpse of a heavenly demon. She won the praise of many people in the cultivation world. Lu Ping was taken aback. Lu Ping knew what a heavenly demon meant. This kind of existence was usually protected by 7 or 8 Azuras. It should be known that usually 3 or 4 Azuras could fight against a pure Yang cultivator if they joined forces, and 5 or 6 Azuras could beat a pure Yang cultivator to the point of fleeing like a rat. And a heavenly demon protected by 7 or 8 Azuras had strength equivalent to a pure Yang cultivator. It was already not easy for 8th Sister Zhu to kill her way into the siege of Mara's army and then kill her way out. Killing another heavenly demon could be considered a narrow escape from death. Just this point alone was indeed admirable. Lin Yu Laozu added, this time, the Nine Mysteries Tower can be said to be a gathering of experts. According to fellow Taoist Xiao, many overseas sects are also participating. Lu Xiaoyu, why don't you go and take a look? This time, Lu Ping was a little tempted. Cultivation wasn't all about hard work. More importantly, it was about learning from other schools of thought. Sometimes, the experiences encountered during one's travels were far more useful than cultivating in seclusion. Not to mention, if the Nine Mystical Tower was really going to be a gathering place, it would be a great pity if he didn't go and experience it for himself. Lu Ping was tempted. Thinking of this, Lu Ping immediately smiled and said, all right, it just so happens that I can travel with Senior and refine the elixir in my spare time. I dare not say anything else, but at least it will greatly reduce Senior's recovery time. In this case, the old man will have to thank Lu Xiaoyu for recognizing me. Previously, the old man was fortunate enough to befriend the sky-splitting sword saint, Xiao Baiyu. Fellow Taoist Xiao once praised you a lot. This time, the old man can introduce fellow Taoist Xiao to you. If you can get fellow Taoist Xiao's guidance, your strength will definitely improve further. Right now, Lu Ping was not willing to get involved in the matters of Xiao Baiyu and the others. At least, he would not get involved until he was on equal footing with Xiao Baiyu and the others. Hearing this, he hurriedly laughed and said, Senior, it is not suitable for you to fight with others, at least not with those who are on par with you. Lin Yu Laozu could see that Lu Ping seemed to have some conflict with Xiao Baiyu, and naturally thought that the two of them might have known each other for a long time. However, it seemed that Lu Ping had not offended Xiao Baiyu. So why was he not willing to get close to him? It should be known that the sky-splitting sword saint, Xiao Baiyu, was at the peak of his power and was known as the #1 pure yang in the cultivation world. Moreover, he was also an expert swordsman. Who knew how many people wanted to receive his guidance but could not? However, it just so happened that Lu Ping was not at all interested in such an opportunity. Lu Ping was not willing to talk about Xiao Baiyu, so he changed the topic and asked Qin Yu and Qin Gang, who were standing behind Lin Yu Laozu, "Brothers Qin, what are your plans for the future?" The two of them looked at each other. Qin Yu, who was slightly older, said, "We have been entrusted with the legacy of the sect, so naturally, we have to rebuild the Luo Xian sect. However, we still have a senior brother who is stranded outside. This senior brother's cultivation level is far above ours. Before the founding master passed away, he told us to find him and rebuild the sect. Previously, there were rumors that this senior brother had gone overseas. We plan to go overseas to find him after the 9 Mysteries Tower." "Senior brother Lei?" An idea came to Lu Ping, and he asked, "What's his name? I am an overseas cultivator. Perhaps I can be of help." Chapter 1259. When Qin Yu and Qin Gang heard Lu Ping's question, their faces lit up with joy. Then, they looked troubled, as if there was something that they could not say. Lin Yu Laozu smiled. "There is nothing to hide. Don't forget that Tu Gaoshan was killed by Lu Xiaoyu." Qin Yu's eyes brightened, saying, "The person we two brothers want to find is 6th senior brother Lei Di. In the past, he was a lone assassin in the central region. Later, there was a rumor that he was captured and taken to the overseas practice world." Qin Gang, who was standing at the side, added, 6th senior brother is way above us in terms of cultivation and talent. He was originally the #1 disciple of our sect, but unfortunately, he assassinated a Dharma adept of the 5 Elements sect and was expelled from the sect. After that, he called himself the assassin's 6th brother Lei. Qin Gang's voice became softer as he saw Lu Ping's stunned expression. It was obvious that he was not listening to what he was saying. Qin Yu saw that Lu Ping's expression was strange and asked, "Brother Lu?" Lu Ping blinked and regained his composure. He smiled bitterly and said, "I'm afraid I have to help even if I don't want to." Seeing the surprised look on their faces, Lu Ping explained, "The person who captured 6th brother Lei and brought him overseas was none other than me. Until now, brother Lei is still guarding the North Sea for my sect, Huangli Island." Qin Yu and Qin Gang's faces are beaming with joy. Qin Gang, who is even less shrewd, says loudly, "This is very good. Anyway, we've offended the 5 Element School, so we can't stay on the central mainland any longer. We might as well go overseas to join senior brother Lei and pass on the school." Qin Yu was not as happy as Qin Gang. Senior brother Lei had a bad reputation in the Central Plains. Later on, he was captured and brought to the North Sea. Senior brother Lei naturally could not make the decision himself. If they wanted to meet up with senior brother Lei, they would need the permission of the person in front of them. However, the crux of the matter was that senior brother Lei had been captured. How could he not feel hatred? And Lu Tianping, who was in front of him, could not have thought of this. Why would he let a potential enemy go? In reality, Lu Ping did not mind this at all. When 6th brother Lei had advanced to the Dharma stage, Lu Ping had promised him that he could leave at any time. Lu Ping did not want to trample on the dignity of a Dharma adept. However, in the end, 6th brother Lei himself was unwilling for some reason, and Lu Ping could only let him be. When Lu Ping saw this, he understood what Qin Yu was thinking. Hence, he said with a smile, "All right, after this matter with the 9 Profound Tower, the two of you will accompany me to the Northern Sea. If brother Lei is willing, I will naturally not stop you." Seeing that Lu Ping had agreed, Qin Yu and Qin Gang both looked delighted. Then, as if they had thought of something, they turned to look at Lin Yu Laozu, who was beside them. Lin Yu Laozu smiled and nodded. "Don't worry, the old man's internal injuries will not recover in a short period of time. If he wants to ask Lu Xiaoyu to make a pill for him, he might have to thicken his skin and follow Lu Xiaoyu back to the Northern Sea." Lu Ping did not know what Lin Yu Laozu's reason was, but since he had already agreed, There was no reason for him to go back on his word. Hence, he could only smile and say, "Senior, going to the Northern Sea is something that I can't ask for more." However, Lin Yu Laozu seemed to have seen through his doubts and seemed to be explaining to Lu Ping, "The old man has been free and unfettered for hundreds of years, but he has never passed down his cultivation. Since the two of you have the intention to establish a new sect, the old man will give this cultivation to you. Not only is it a tribute to my old friend for saving my life, but it is also a way to ensure that the legacy of the sect that the old man came from will not be severed." Lu Ping could only sigh at the good luck of the two remaining brothers of Luo Xian Mountain. With the guidance of a pure young cultivator, the restoration of Luo Xian sect would be much easier. However, he did not know if Lin Yu Laozu would return to Luo Xian sect. If that was the case, Luo Xian sect would be different with a pure young cultivator in charge. At least, Lu Ping would definitely dispel the idea of restoring Luo Xian sect in the Northern Sea. The seven of them hurried all the way. 5 days later, they arrived at Jushuan Mountain, which was outside the Jushuan Tower. This was also one of the gathering points of the cultivation world. After arriving here, Lin Yu Laozu received some news. Lin Yu Laozu said, "It's fellow cultivator Xiao. He asked me to meet him. Why don't you come with me?" Qin Yu and Qin Gang were extremely excited to be able to meet the greatest sword saint in the world. Lu Ping, however, knew that Laozu was actually inviting him, so he shook his head and said, "I won't be going. I'll find a place to practice here. I'll also refine some pills for you to treat your internal injuries." Ancestor Lin Yu had more than one kind of injury, not to mention that he was a pure young cultivator. Even if he wasn't injured, it wasn't something that could be healed with just a spirit pill. The injuries of a pure young cultivator were often very troublesome to heal. After agreeing on a method of communication with Lin Yu Laozu, Lu Ping could not wait to find a quiet place. He grabbed Debao out of the House of Gold and said, "Quick, find a quiet place underground. This time, you'll benefit greatly." Hearing this, Debao brought Lu Ping and sank into the ground without saying anything. After sinking for 300 zhong, Debao was already somewhat exhausted. Lu Ping stretched out his hand and slapped Debao's back. A stream of elemental energy was injected into Debao's body. The two of them immediately sank for another 300 zhong. Only then did Debao use his earth magic power. In just a short while, he opened up several secret rooms below them. Lu Ping threw the storage magic device he obtained from Tu Gaoshan to Debao and said, "This is the storage magic device of the Wuxing School's Tu Gaoshan. Except for a few things that I can use, everything inside is here. If you don't use these things to practice, I'll confiscate all your spiritual stones." As soon as Debao heard that this was Tu Gaoshan's storage magic device, his eyes brightened. Debao had followed Lu Ping for a long time, so he naturally knew what kind of person Tu Gaoshan was. He did not expect that Big Brother would be able to rob such a person. That's not right. Tu Gaoshan's storage magic device can be carried anywhere. Does this mean that Tu Gaoshan is already in Big Brother's hands? This is too audacious. Nowadays, Debao's thoughts were not simple. A storage magic device had already made Debao think of everything. However, he had never been able to resist the temptation of treasures. Naturally, the collection of the Holy Land's heirs was not bad. Seeing that the storage magic device was thrown at him, he immediately snatched it away. As for the other things, since Big Brother did not care about it, it meant that Big Brother already had a plan in mind. Naturally, Debao did not care about it. After sending Debao away to practice, Lu Ping's divine thoughts immediately descended into the House of Gold. Now, as Lu Ping's cultivation became more and more refined, he could even use the divine thoughts descending technique in the space that he could control. In other words, he could condense his divine thoughts into a shadow that was exactly the same as his body. Ordinary people would not be able to see it clearly. At this moment, under the spirit demon peach tree, an elegant firewind Luan was dancing gracefully. Behind her were two ugly duckling-like birds that were chirping. They flew up and down, high and low, but no matter what, they could not fly with the graceful rhythm of the firewind Luan. That firewind Luan was naturally Lu Qin. The two ugly birds that had yet to bloom were the two wood Luan eggs that Lu Ping had brought out from the 9 profound towers longevity paradise. Now, 7 years ago, Lu Qiner had hatched the two Woodlawn chicks. They had been following Lu Qiner around the House of Gold like a shadow. Ever since Lu Qiner obtained a Luan's tear from Lu Ping, other than cultivating, she had been hatching the two Woodlawn chicks in the House of Gold. Although Lu Qiner's cultivation had been stuck at this level due to the difficulty of finding wind and fire elemental spiritual treasures, her demonic aura had become more and more elegant and noble. Lu Ping scanned the two Woodlawn chicks with his divine thoughts. He discovered that the two Woodlawn chicks were already at the 9th layer of blood refining realm. They were only one step away from the blood condensation realm. The Woodlawn race was indeed a top-tier race. In just 7 years, they were able to raise their cultivation to this level. If not for the fact that Lu Ping had been suppressing the two chicks to strengthen their foundations, Lu Qiner would have already helped the two chicks advance to the blood condensation realm. Seeing that Lu Ping had arrived, Lu Qiner left the two chicks to play by themselves. She transformed into her human form and approached Lu Ping. She asked, "Big brother, what brings you here?" Lu Ping laughed and said, "Qiner, I've brought you a surprise this time." Lu Qiner tucked her hair behind her ear and said with a smile, "Oh, what treasure did Big Brother find this time?" Lu Ping said proudly, "I'm lucky this time. I actually found a spiritual treasure. Take a look." Lu Qiner's eyes lit up when she heard this. She took the spirit sealing box from Lu Ping's hands and opened it to see a fist-sized jade pendant inside. One side of the jade pendant was wind green, while the other side was fiery red. The two were fused into one, giving it a mystical appearance. Lu Qiner played with the jade pendant fondly, and her face beamed with joy. She said with surprise, "A mid-grade heaven rank wind and fire dual attribute spirit treasure. Big brother, you found it?" Lu Ping nodded and said with a smile, "It's called the Firewind Jade Pendant. It's a top-notch mid-grade heaven rank wind and fire dual attribute spirit treasure. Unfortunately, ever since you refined the Phoenix's tear, your cultivation has improved a step further. Now, refining a high-grade heaven rank wind and fire dual attribute spirit treasure isn't a problem." Lu Qiner didn't mind in the slightest. She said, "If it wasn't for Big Brother, Qiner would still be an ordinary wind phoenix. How could I have the opportunity to advance my cultivation to such a level? The difficulty of searching for a mid-grade heaven rank dual attribute spirit treasure is even greater than searching for a high-grade heaven rank spirit treasure. Moreover, since the world of cultivation was split open, only a few high-grade heaven rank dual attribute spirit treasures have appeared." Lu Ping sighed and said, "It's still a little lacking in the end." Lu Qiner said with a smile, "Don't worry, Big Brother. Although Qiner refined the Phoenix's tear, a considerable amount of it still remains in Qiner's body. Qiner was originally worried about how to make the best use of the Phoenix's tear. Now, this Firewind Jade Pendant has come at the right time. With its help, the Firewind Jade Pendant's quality can be improved to the level of a high-grade heaven rank spirit treasure." Chapter 1260. Lu Qiner was originally Lu Ping's strongest spiritual pet. Even Samling was at most on par with her in the reign. However, because the heaven and earth spirit objects that Lu Qiner needed were really difficult to find, her cultivation was once again stuck at the bottleneck of the peak of the core forging realm after passing through the middle and late stages of the core forging realm. Lu Ping put in a lot of effort to find a heaven-ranked mid-grade wind-fire dual elemental spirit for Lu Qiner. Once, he even found a heaven-ranked low-grade wind-fire dual elemental spirit. Originally, Lu Qiner had planned to advance to the peak of the core forging realm, but in the end, Lu Ping was reluctant to waste Lu Qiner's talent. In the end, Lu Qiner relied on the bottleneck of the peak of the core forging realm for 20 to 30 years. Before that, Samling's cultivation had advanced to the peak of the core forging realm, and his cultivation had surpassed Lu Qiner. Lu Hai had even successfully condensed his Dharma power a few years ago, and Lu Bai and Lu Linger were only a thin film away from the Dharma power stage. This time, Lu Ping finally found the Wind and Fire Jade Wall, a mid-grade heaven stage wind and fire spirit object, from Tu Gaoshan's body. Impatiently, he took De Bao to open up the underground secret room and sent the spirit object to Lu Qiner. Lu Qiner had stayed in the ninth stage of the core forging realm for a long time, and had accumulated enough foundation. She only lacked this last opportunity. After handing over the two little wooden birds to Lu Taohua, Lu Ping used 25 top-grade spirit stones to refer to the simplest spirit gathering formation in the Wuxing School's formation inheritance explanation. He used the 5-element ring as the formation plate and told Lu Qiner to refine the heaven and earth spirit objects for cultivation before returning to the secret room. Not far away, De Bao's strange laughter came from another secret room, as if he had obtained some rare treasure. Lu Ping was too lazy to pay attention to him. He ordered Lu Hai to warn and protect him. Lu Ping chose a secret room and immersed himself in cultivation. Lu Bai and Lu Linger also began to retreat, ready to welcome the condensation of the Dharma power. Lu Ping stretched out his hand and snapped his fingers. Linglong's wine cauldron rose from behind Lu Ping. Then the mouth of the cauldron slightly tilted, and a pure purple-blue light condensed along the edge of the cauldron into a small pillar of spirit light. It directly fell towards the top of Lu Ping's head. Without waiting for the pillar of spirit light to fall, a small cyclone suddenly formed above Lu Ping's head. Then the purple-blue pillar of spirit light disappeared into the cyclone. Then, a purple-blue light slowly hung down around Lu Ping's body. Countless small purple-blue light seeped out from the light shield and rushed towards Lu Ping's body like moths to a flame. Linglong's wine cauldron could barely contain half of the Qingming River's water vein. Linglong was only a first tribulation spirit treasure. Although it could barely contain the water vein, after a long time, the essence of the water vein would evaporate and be wasted. Therefore, Lu Ping would focus on cultivation whenever he had time. He wanted to refine the water vein in the wine cauldron and convert it into cultivation as soon as possible. However, there was one thing that puzzled Lu Ping. It was said that the water vein of the Qingming River was formed because of Pengdaoren, and the Yulon River was bought because of Jiaodaoren. Because the two heaven-splitting Laozu didn't get along, the two water veins were not compatible. Originally, Lu Ping was still worried that the North Sea wave listening formula that he was practicing could almost be confirmed to be the water vein left behind by Jiaodaoren, one of the 49 true spirit inheritances left behind by the 7th patriarch. If that was the case, would it be like the other two water veins, where Lu Ping's technique would be unable to refine the water vein of the Qingming River? Or would the refined inner yuan conflict with the inner yuan that Lu Ping had originally trained in? However, this situation did not seem to have existed from the beginning. Moreover, as Lu Ping continued to refine the inner yuan that the Qingming River had transformed into was vast and mighty. Even with Lu Ping's current cultivation of the mid-Dharma stage, he could clearly feel that his own cultivation was increasing significantly. A month later, the space in front of Lu Ping fluctuated. Lu Ping, who was in the middle of his training, suddenly opened his eyes. Then, he drew a line in front of him with his index finger, and a circular space tunnel suddenly formed. A voice transmission jade talisman shot out from the tunnel and was grabbed by Lu Ping. The contents of the jade talisman surprised Lu Ping. It mainly introduced to Lu Ping the general situation of the 9 mystical tower and the increasing number of cultivators from various sects and sects that had gathered there. 8th Sister Zhu was able to escape from the 9 mystical tower, which was surrounded by the North Mara's army. Naturally, she had a secret channel that allowed her to contact the 9 mystical tower. According to the 9 mystical tower, although the current 9 mystical tower could still hold on for a period of time, they had already suffered heavy losses. Including 8th Sister Zhu, 2 of the 6 pure yang cultivators of the 9 mystical tower had already fallen. In addition, they were seriously injured after killing the sky demon and could no longer fight. The 9 mystical tower only had 4 pure yang cultivators left. 30 to 40% of the remaining late Dharma adepts had fallen, and the remaining ones were all injured. As for the other early and middle Dharma adepts and core forging adepts, the losses were even more uncountable. Such heavy losses were difficult for a holy land to bear. Perhaps 8th Sister Zhu was exaggerating, but at least the 2 pure yang cultivators who had fallen were definitely true. It could be said that the 9 mystical tower had really reached a point where they could not afford to delay any longer. After seeing this, Lu Ping revealed a slightly mocking smile. It was true that the 9 mystical tower had suffered heavy losses, But if they had reached a critical point where they could not afford to delay any longer, it was just to fool some low-level adepts who did not know the truth. How could the foundations of the 6 holy lands be so simple? In the past few days of communicating with Lin Yulaozu, Lu Ping could tell from his words that the 6 holy lands were not as simple as they seemed on the surface. Think about the treasured cauldron of the universe in Wuxing School. That was one of the 6 divine weapons of opening the heavens. The 9 mystical tower was also a holy land. Could it be that they did not have a treasure that was comparable? Moreover, the 5 pure young warriors could bring such a treasure like the treasured cauldron of the universe out of Wuxing School without any qualms. Were they not afraid that someone would take the treasured cauldron away, or that someone would fire up their old nest? Or perhaps they were not afraid at all, because there was still a presence in Wuxing School that could hold their ground. Then what would such a presence be? Would such a presence also exist in the 9 mystical tower? The 6 holy lands were all existences that could be traced back to the time of opening the heavens. How many trump cards did they hide that were not known to others? How strong were their foundations? How many secrets were buried in them? Other than themselves, no one else would know. It was only in times of real danger that these hidden things would have the opportunity to reveal the tip of the iceberg. This time, in order to attract all the cultivators in the world to fight the 9 mystical tower, Lu Ping also learned an unexpected secret. The 6 holy lands seemed to be in control of a top-secret location. The location of this top-secret location was not a secret in the eyes of the 6 holy lands, large sects, and carefree pure young cultivators. However, at the level that Lu Ping and Jinling were at, they were clearly not qualified to know about it. Now, they planned to make this secret public and use it as a reward for participating in the Battle of the 9 Mystical Tower. It was said that after 8th Sister Zhu suggested it, Xiao Baiyu, Qi Fan Laozu, and Lin Yu Laozu fought for it with all their might. However, the pure young cultivators from the other 5 holy lands obviously did not agree. In fact, if it was not for the crisis that the 9 mystical tower was facing, 8th Sister Zhu would not have abandoned the other 5 holy lands and stood together with Xiao Baiyu and the others. For the 6 holy lands to be able to stand tall since the beginning of the world, everyone knew that there were conflicts, schemes, and grudges between them. However, it was even more ridiculous to say that there was no tacit understanding, cooperation, or alliance between them. When faced with someone challenging the position of the 6 holy lands, they would be more united than ever. When Xiao Baiyu strongly invited Lin Yu Laozu to come, Lu Ping figured out something. Xiao Baiyu was determined to stand on the opposite side of the 6 holy lands. If he wanted the 6 holy lands to give in, the only thing he could do was to use pure young cultivators like Qi Fan Laozu, Feng Lu, and Yuan Shoutian, as well as the large sects behind them, as well as cultivators like Lin Yu Laozu, who represented the identity of a rogue cultivator. In fact, he had found a good opportunity. When the 9 mystical tower was besieged by Mara's army, 8th Sister Zhu had no choice but to stand on his side. As a result, the alliance of the 6 holy lands had to be broken. A month later, Lu Ping came out of seclusion. At this time, more and more cultivators had begun to gather outside the 9 mystical mountain. Only at this time could Lu Ping feel the prosperity of the cultivation world of Central Plains, where there were as many sects and cultivators as there were hairs on a cow. The cultivators who had rushed over from various parts of the Central Plains, and even those who had come from overseas had gathered together. Those who belonged to sects would occupy a better location and display their signboards. As for those who did not belong to any sects, they would each have their own hideouts. At that very moment, however, a large market had spontaneously formed outside 9 Profound Mountain. The battle between 9 Profound Tower and Demon Luo was unavoidable. Thus, the eve of the battle was naturally the best time to do business. Lu Ping wandered around the market casually. At the same time, he also looked at the situation in the market. He secretly praised the Central Plains for being a paradise for cultivation. 1,000-year-old spiritual herbs and spiritual treasures could be sold in the open, and there seemed to be a lot of them. Lu Ping even saw an early core forging adept take out a mid-grade alchemy cauldron to trade for something. If this was the North Sea, an early core forging adept would not dare to do such a thing. The moment he stepped out of the market, he would probably be killed for his treasures. Not far away, the 2 brothers, Qin Yu and Qin Gang hurried over when they saw Lu Ping appear. Although the two of them were early Dharma adepts, they knew their own strengths. Among early Dharma adepts, their abilities could only be considered average. In front of a mid-Dharma adept like Lu Ping, who could kill late Dharma adepts without hesitation, they did not dare to show the slightest bit of disrespect. This was what Lin Yu Laozu had instructed them to do before. "Greetings, Brother Lu. I will be counting on Brother Lu to take care of us this time." Lu Ping smiled and nodded, saying, "Not a problem. However, now that the two of you are temporarily joining my Jinling side, it will not be the same as when the next person is free and unfettered. No matter what, you have to show your name here." Chapter 1261. Through Lin Yu Laozu's disclosure, Lu Ping knew that because it involved the reward for entering the top secret place, the various sects and clans that had gathered, even if they were only loose cultivators, would bring out their true abilities to fight against Mara's army. Under such circumstances, obtaining a place to recuperate near the Nine Mysteries Tower as soon as possible was undoubtedly the most important thing. The battle to encircle and annihilate Mara would not be completed in one go. It would definitely be a long and difficult battle. Otherwise, Mara's army would not have been able to besiege a holy land to such a sorry state. The Purple Sun Palace, which had just entered a stalemate with the Demon Clan in the Western Wilderness, sent people over. The conflict between the Lingyun Valley and the Demon Clan in the Endless Mountains also gradually eased. In the end, the Lingyun Valley did not manage to seize Magic Cloud City. The situation gradually stabilized, so they also sent people to the Nine Mysteries Tower. Soon after, the Skyward Pavilion and the Yuan clan once again sent pure young practitioners to lead their disciples over. Even the Wuxing School's Shui Jiro came with the new 5-element straight disciple of Wuxing School. When had the Holy Lands ever lacked heir disciples? The so-called 6th, 7th, and 8th heir disciples were only slightly inferior compared to the 5 great rulings. The brand new 5 great rulings were still the true experts of the 3rd generation of cultivators. The Crystal Palace was the last to arrive, but in the Central Plains cultivation world, which had always been overbearing, no one dared to look down on this overseas giant. One only needed to look at the Heavenly Moon sect, which was supported by the Nine Mysteries Tower and the Skyward Pavilion, to pay a huge price and painstakingly block the Crystal Palace's invasion into the Central Plains. One could see the strength of this overseas Holy Land. After the 5 Holy Lands arrived at the outer perimeter of the 9 Profound Tower, they quickly set up camp with the 9 Profound Tower as the center. After the 5 Holy Lands, the Yuan family, Heavenly Arcana Sect, Skyrend, Heavenly Moon Sect, Supreme Arcana Sect, Soaring Cloud Pavilion, Carefree Sect, Thunderstorm Island, Violet Talisman Pavilion, Guangfa Sect, Flowing Cloud Sect, Vast Ocean Pavilion, Talisman Sect, and other large sects from the Middle Plains, Eastern Sea, and Southern Sea began to send their cultivators to gather around the 9 Profound Tower. Even the Spirit Beast Sect, which had always been elusive, began to appear in large numbers around the 9 Profound Tower. As the cultivators of these large sects gathered around the 9 Profound Tower, rumors about the secret location of the 7th Patriarch's Taoist altar spread like wildfire in the cultivation world. It was said that in this battle to annihilate Mara of the 9 Profound Tower, the various sects and loose cultivators would be rewarded for entering the secret location of the 7th Patriarch's Taoist altar. In addition, there might be a few other secret locations that could be jointly opened by pure young cultivators as additional rewards for the sects and sections. However, among these secret locations, the one related to the 7th Patriarch's Taoist altar was the most famous. It was said that this place was once the heaven-splitting 7th Patriarch's Taoist altar. The 7th Patriarch had once preached to the human race here. The famous legacy of the 49 true spirits that had been passed down through the ages came from here. The foundation of all the cultivation systems of later generations came from the 49 true spirits branches or extensions. When the 7th Patriarch gave his speech, it was said that there were still echoes of the 7th Patriarch's heaven-splitting speech left behind in this secret location. If a cultivator could hear even half a sentence of it, they might be able to break through a bottleneck in their cultivation, cultivate a certain magic power, or comprehend a certain secret technique and obtain great benefits. The opening of this secret location was extremely strange. There were indeed many people who knew the exact location, but usually, only pure yang cultivators could control it. Usually, pure yang cultivators could not open it by themselves. Instead, they needed to gather at least 7 pure yang cultivators. However, these pure yang cultivators could not just gather 7 at will. Instead, these 7 pure yang cultivators had to have one of the 7 major bloodlines. Even the attributes of their cultivation techniques had to be the same as the 7 attributes of metal, wood, water, fire, earth, wind, and ice. Therefore, not to mention that a sacred ground might not be able to have 7 pure yang cultivators. Even if they had 7 pure yang cultivators, they would still fail because of these harsh requirements. In fact, every time the 7th Patriarch's Taoist altar was opened, at least 10 pure yang cultivators would need to join forces to fully meet these harsh conditions. It was precisely because the major sects and families had found out about this in advance that they had dispatched their cultivators to the vicinity of the 9 profound tower. It was for the sake of making preparations in advance so that they could obtain a greater result after the war began. That way, they might be able to obtain more rewards. Fortunately, Lu Ping had received a hint from Lin Yu Laozu in advance. Although Jinling was far away in the ocean, due to the existence of Yingshan Courtyard, he must have received the news. With Tianling Laozu's shrewdness, he would definitely send cultivators from his sect to participate in this event. All Lu Ping could do was to occupy a place for Jinling as soon as possible and show his sect's name. Only then would he be able to occupy an advantageous position in the encirclement of Mara's army and obtain greater results in the war. Very soon, the 6 pure yang cultivators from the 6 sacred grounds, Sky Splitter Sword Saint Xiao Baiyu, Yuan family clans Yuan Tongtian, Heavenly Mystery Sect 7 Fans Laozu, Spirit Beast Taming Sects Feng Lu Laozu, Heavenly Moon Sects Full Moon Laozu, Middle Earth's Loose Cultivator Lin Yu Laozu, Southern Seas Pure Yang Cultivator Yu Xiang Laozu, and the rest of the 13 pure yang cultivators announced to the entire cultivation world that they would use this battle to encircle the 9 mystical towers Mara to decide how to enter the 7th Patriarch's Taoist altar. The rumor in the cultivation world was finally confirmed. Be it the large sects of the Central Plains or the overseas region who had been slow to react, as well as the other small and medium-sized sects, all came to their senses and began to send their cultivators to the 9 mystical tower. Lu Ping, Qin Yu and Qin Gang chose a place at the foot of the 9 mystical mountain that was easy to defend and difficult to attack. It was also a good place for them to set up a formation. This place was close to the Qingming River and was one of the directions where Mara's army could break out of the encirclement. However, if Jinling stubbornly stood in their way, they would not attract the full force of Mara's attack. After all, the Qingming River was very wide and Jinling would not be able to defend the entire Qingming River. Moreover, as an overseas sect, most of Jinling's cultivators practiced water-type magic arts or were very familiar with and adapted to places with abundant water. Lu Ping had chosen this place because of its geographical advantage. More importantly, Lu Ping still needed to borrow the Qingming River's water vein to speed up the refinement of the water vein that he had absorbed. Moreover, because the water vein and the Qingming River were originally one, Lu Ping could easily capture the main water vein of the Qingming River with the help of the water vein in Linglong's wine cauldron. He could then use the power of the main water vein to temporarily transform the campsite into a place with abundant spiritual energy. Of course, all of this was just Lu Ping's imagination. To complete it, he still had to hope that when the cultivators of Jinling arrived, they would not forget to bring 2 formation masters with them. Lu Ping called out all of his holy pets that he could use from the Golden House. Qin Yu and Qin Gang, who were beside him, stared with their mouths agape. The green sea snake was not a big deal, but was that arrogant tiger a member of the Hanging Eyes White Forehead Tiger clan? And that black tortoise, with such a huge body, was not something that ordinary black tortoises could reach. In recent years, Lu Tianping, a third-generation disciple of a medium-sized North Sea sectionling, has made a great name for himself in the cultivation world of Central Earth. I think this camp has been occupied by that Lu Tianping, so they are making preparations for their own school. After hearing this, The great cultivator sneered and said, "A medium-sized school wants to occupy such a treasured place. There are no heroes in this era, and he has become famous. Just go and tell him to leave this place." Chapter 1262. Lu Ping picked at his ears in disbelief, thinking that he had heard wrongly. But looking at the serious expression on the face of this early Dharma adept, Lu Ping waved his hand and pointed at all the arrangements he had made. "Retreat? Leave these for you?" Lu Ping had traveled the Middle Earth for decades and had met many experts from the famous sects, including the heirs of the many sacred grounds. These people might be arrogant, but they never used their power to bully others. Lu Ping originally thought that the so-called arrogant, despotic, and domineering bullies wouldn't appear in the cultivation world after decades of self-cultivation. But he didn't expect to meet such an arrogant, despotic, and domineering bullies. Lu Ping didn't expect to encounter such a person today. Brother Lu, the Huta sect is a major sect in the northwest of the central mainland. The sect has a long history, and there are two great adepts in charge. I heard that this time, the Huta sect is taking the encirclement of Mara very seriously, and one of the two great adepts has personally led the sect's disciples here. Qinyu, who was standing to one side, said worriedly behind Lu Ping. The Hutu sect? Even the disciples from the Holy Lands had to be polite when they saw him. Regardless of friend or foe, they had to address him as Brother Lu. Since when was it the turn of an ordinary disciple from a major sect to act so arrogantly in front of him? They were trying to take advantage of the fact that Jinling's sect was not as good as Huta's sect. But how could Huta's sect be so bold? Did they think that Jinling's sect was inferior to Huta's sect? Was it just a title between a large sect and a medium-sized sect? Lu Ping smiled and said, "Sure, let the person in charge of your family say it." Lu Ping really did not think highly of this third-generation disciple of the Huta sect, who was supposed to be of the same generation as him. Li Hui was a third-generation disciple of the Huta sect, and she was also an early Dharma adept. In the Huta sect, she was naturally a true disciple. Naturally, he had heard of the name of the North Sea Water Sword Fairy. To be honest, if Chang Li Hui had seen Lu Ping in the past, she would have been more or less respectful, but how could she not be jealous? Today, she finally had the backing of the ancestral master. At the thought of being able to slap the face of this so-called number one fellow of the third generation, Li Hui felt a surge of excitement from the bottom of her heart. Thus, she had run over to flaunt her prowess in front of this water sword immortal. However, she did not expect that the person in front of her would look at her as if she was watching a monkey show. With a few casual words, she wanted to send him away. They didn't put him in their eyes at all. Li Hui was enraged and she shouted, "You're going too far." Reaching out, she curled up a spell and clawed at Lu Ping's shoulder. Li Hui's five-finger mountain spell, when practiced to the extreme, could cause each finger to have the weight of a huge mountain. Although Li Hui was far from reaching the point where her 5 fingers were 5 mountains, this clawing would at least have the strength of a mountain. With a sneak attack from behind, in his opinion, it would be enough to make Lu Tianping suffer a loss. Li Hui knew that he was no match for the person in front of him. He only hoped to be able to make the first move. That way, even if he lost, it would be a glorious loss. Her level of practice was already inferior to his, and if she could make a move in front of the North Sea Water Sword Fairy, she only needed to gain the slightest advantage, and it would be enough for her to make a name for herself in the world of practitioners. When that time came, she would have this experience in the Huda sect, and she would no longer need to be the second official disciple. Unexpectedly, just as his hand was about to claw Lu Ping's shoulder, an undercurrent suddenly surged around Lu Ping's body. It was invisible, but it suddenly gave him the feeling of a raging wave. Li Hui's body abruptly trembled, and he involuntarily took a step back. The spell that was originally aimed at Lu Ping's shoulder suddenly missed its target. However, Li Hui's five-finger mountain spell was also extraordinary. The moment it missed its target, his arm suddenly grew longer, and the hand of spiritual energy in midair quickly chased after Lu Ping's shoulder. However, before his hand could land again, the wave that had pushed him back surged again, and that invisible wave forced Li Hui to take another step back. But Li Hui still did not want to give up. He knew that if this continued, it would not only be a slap in the face to the North Sea Sword Fairy, but also a slap in his own face. What's more, this was happening in front of the elders of the sect and under the watchful eyes of everyone. Li Hui seemed to feel that he had no other choice at the moment, and could only try his best to resolve the continuous wave that had surged from Lu Ping's body. However, the result was that he wanted to resolve it, but the more he tried, the more his face turned red. Step by step, Lu Ping's invisible wave reached 12 peaks in a row, and Li Hui had to take 12 steps back, until his five-finger mountain spell could no longer reach Lu Ping. In midair, after Li Hui of the Huta sect received the order to drive away Lu Ping and the others, a mid-Dharma adept behind Rongshan Laozu of the Huta sect could not stop him in time. With a wry smile, he stepped forward and said, "Uncle Master, that Lu Tianping of the North Sea is not easy to deal with." This Uncle Master of the Huta sect had always paid no attention to worldly affairs and only focused on cultivation. This time, the people of the Hutu sect who had rushed to the Nine Mystical Tower to participate in the battle against Mara sect were led by Rongshan Laozu. 2 second-generation disciples in the middle Dharma stage had come, and 4 adepts in the early Dharma stage had come. Among them, 3 were third-generation disciples. It could be said that more than half of the Dharma adepts of the Hutu sect had been sent to participate in the battle against Mara sect. Other than that, there were also 30 to 40 disciples in the core forging stage who had been brought along to broaden their horizons. When these people all headed towards the base of the Jinling sect, the scene looked very grand. Lu Ping returned to the base and was about to further adjust the simple 5 elements formation to strengthen the defense of the base. It was at this time that Lu Ping's divine will seemed to sense something. Just as he was about to raise his head to look, he felt a huge force descending from the sky, directly supporting Lu Ping's entire body. Lu Ping felt as if he was suddenly carrying a mountain on his back. His legs turned to jelly, and he almost fell to the ground. It was a good thing that Lu Ping's physical body was strong enough, and his reaction was fast enough. Just as the huge force was about to hit him, Lu Ping's inner yuan revolved around his body, and he used his inner yuan to resist the huge force that was supporting his body. Lu Ping raised his head to look, and coincidentally saw an old monk looking down at him with a shocked expression. He saw that this old man's hands were in the air, and he was using the same method that the third-generation disciple of the Huda sect had used to sneak up on him. The only difference was that the person in front of him had a higher level of practice, and he was a true grand adept. It seemed that the Huda sect was really going to rob him. The inner yuan in Lu Ping's body directly flowed out of his body, and together with the protective aura around his body, they turned into waves that washed upwards, directly counteracting the pressure of the Rong Mountain Laozu. Then, Lu Ping stretched out his hand, and the thin water soared into the sky, then turned into a huge boiling wave, bringing with it the sound of boiling water. The Rong Mountain Laozu let out a strange roar, and for a moment, he was at a loss of what to do, and was sent flying dozens of feet away. The boiling sky sword spell was activated, and the sword light directly turned into a huge, boiling wave, which pushed the mountain-like power straight up into the sky. After that, Lu Ping followed the pair of swords and hovered in the air. The huge wave of sword light suddenly collapsed towards the center, and the edge of the sword light formed a huge circle of sword light, which rose high into the sky, encircling the Rong Mountain Laozu, who hadn't had the time to adjust his posture after being knocked into the sky. The collapsed wave of sword light in the center formed a huge whirlpool of sword light, which connected with the circle of sword light that rose up from the surrounding area. Surprisingly, it was a huge, supreme sword formation. The sword spell of all rivers flow into the sea. The Rong Mountain Laozu thought that he had already overestimated Lu Ping, but in fact, Lu Ping was far more powerful than he had imagined. The Rong Mountain Laozu was an experienced cultivator, and naturally, he could see the power of the sword formation that had surrounded him at first glance. Therefore, he threw a small hill-sized spirit treasure above his head, and a yellow beam of light fell down, shielding him in the middle. He wanted to defend himself with his life. Therefore, he knew that as long as he could hold on for a while, the other disciples of his sect would come and save him. Since he had kicked an iron plate this time, he had no choice but to give up his face. However, Lu Ping sneered. The last thing he was afraid of was that someone would defend himself with their life under his sword attack. Tu Gaoshan was a perfect example. Chapter 1263. The strike launched by this Rong Mountain Laozu was as powerful as a mountain, which shocked Lu Ping. This strike was similar to the one launched by the third-generation disciple of the Hutu martial school, but the power of this strike was much more powerful than that of the third-generation disciple of the Hutu martial school. If Li Hui's previous attack wasn't as powerful as a mountain, then this sneaky attack launched by the great ancestor of the Rong Mountain sect, which was similar to a sneak attack, had already surpassed the power of 5 mountains when he stretched out his palms. However, it seemed that because of the nature of the cultivation method that the Hutu martial school had been practicing, although the power of this magic was powerful enough, it was extremely inflexible. Once their attacks were blocked by their opponents, they would often start to completely defend because they couldn't react in time. The nature of the earth was good at defending. This was the case for Rong Mountain Laozu of the Hutu martial school, Earth Spirit, a pure yang cultivator from the Wuxing school, and Tu Gaoshan, the deceased Juzi. However, at this critical moment, Lu Ping surely wouldn't kill anyone, because that would make him the target of everyone. Nevertheless, he didn't mind making this Hutu martial school, which had come to his doorstep, lose face, so that it would serve as a warning to the other large sects who were planning to attack the base of the Jinling martial school. Lu Ping's cultivation was improving faster and faster. Back then, when he defeated the 4th elder of the Tima people in the Qingming River, Lu Ping's victory seemed to be extremely difficult. However, now that he was fighting against a powerful cultivator, Lu Ping seemed to be more and more relaxed. Except for the sneak attack at the beginning, which almost made Lu Ping suffer a small loss, Lu Ping turned the tables around more and more effortlessly. Rong Mountain Laozu had been trapped in the dazzling sword formation by Lu Ping. Immediately, Rong Mountain Laozu found himself in a difficult situation. The power of this supreme sword magic was much more powerful than what Rong Mountain Laozu had expected. Pieces of rocks were chopped off and sent flying in all directions. Countless sword lights shredded the mountain-shaped treasure floating above the old man's head, causing it to scatter all over the place. However, Rong Mountain Laozu was after all an experienced cultivator. Although he was trapped by Lu Ping's sword formation, he didn't just passively defend like Tu Gaoshan. When Lu Ping found a few cultivators rushing over, the thin water-flowing sword immediately sped up to kill them. However, Lu Ping immediately sensed that the mountain spirit treasure above Rong Mountain Laozu's head suddenly shone with a muddy yellow light. Next, Lu Ping felt that the thin water-flowing sword suddenly became 10 times heavier than before. Before it got close, the sword lights that were surrounding Rong Mountain Laozu's head were also disrupted. Rong Mountain Laozu surely wouldn't let go of such an opportunity. Of course, he knew that once he fell into a disadvantageous situation, his disciples would definitely come to his rescue. However, compared to that, Rong Mountain Laozu preferred to break out of the encirclement by himself. This time, he couldn't defeat Lu Ping, which had already made Rong Mountain Laozu feel humiliated. If he was trapped by Lu Ping again and couldn't get out of the encirclement, he would have to rely on the strength of his disciples to defeat Lu Ping. At this moment, Rong Mountain Laozu still wanted to save some of his dignity. The magical power released by Rong Mountain Laozu's spirit treasure had brought a lot of trouble to Lu Ping's control of his sword art. However, at this moment, Rong Mountain Laozu could only slightly improve his own condition, but it was still far from enough for him to break out of the encirclement created by Lu Ping, which had been carefully set up by Lu Ping. As expected, every time Rong Mountain Laozu rushed out of the encirclement with his spirit treasure, Lu Ping would block him back every time. Sometimes, Rong Mountain Laozu seemed to break through a layer of sword light, but what appeared in front of him was another layer of sword light, as if Lu Ping's supreme sword art was endless and endless. Lu Ping was getting more and more familiar with the control of the encirclement. In his hands, this gigantic sword formation was not only powerful, but more importantly, it had become more flexible and flexible. Even under Rong Mountain Laozu's gravitational power, he could still forcibly trap Rong Mountain Laozu in the sword formation. Rong Mountain Laozu was getting more and more impatient. He could feel the strange changes of this sword formation, and what was more terrifying was that this sword formation was strangling the defensive spirit treasure above his head. If it continued like this, once his spirit treasure was cut into pieces, what else could he do to defend himself from Lu Ping's attacks? The Hutu clan's cultivators had already arrived, but they saw a thin layer of 5 elements formation light rising into the sky. Qin Yu and Qin Gang had activated the simple 5 elements formation that they had hurriedly set up and blocked the Hutu clan's cultivators. The 2 Hutu clan's mid-Dharma adepts looked at each other and waved their hands from behind. Dozens of Hutu clan's cultivators, led by the 6 Dharma adepts, were about to attack. Qin Yu and Qin Gang, the 2 early Dharma adepts, did not retreat. They immediately joined forces to block the attack of a Hutu clan's mid-Dharma adept, but it looked like it was extremely difficult. If it were not for the 5 elements formation as a barrier, the 2 would have been defeated in the first round. The same was true of Samling. If Lu Hai was alone in the early Dharma stage, none of the 4 early Dharma adepts from the Hutu clan would be a match for him. However, at this time, there was another mid-Dharma adept from the Hutu clan. The 3 of them had no choice but to join forces to fight against the other mid-Dharma adept. However, the Hutu clan had the advantage in numbers. Although Lu Xiaohai, Lu Dagui, Lu Taohua, and the others were not weak among their peers, they were all core forging adepts. It was already commendable for them to be able to block the attacks of 2 or 3 same-level adepts from the Hutu clan. It was unrealistic for them to face the remaining 4 early Dharma adepts from the Hutu clan. The Hutu clan had only attacked once, and the 5 elements formation was already on the verge of collapse. It looked like it would not be able to take a second blow. However, at this moment, a little person flashing with purplish-blue light suddenly appeared outside the 5 elements formation. With a loud and clear shout, "Kill!" Lu Xiaoping's small face became more and more tense. The Tsang Lu's sword on his back was held in his hand, and a sharp light broke through the void. When it appeared again, the 2 early Dharma adepts from the Hutu clan cried out in alarm and leaped back. Fortunately, the Hutu clan adepts were very good at defense. With the 2 of them working together, they were finally able to block the sword of this strange little person. However, they still had a lingering fear. If the little person had launched a sneak attack and only targeted one of them, the 2 of them thought that neither of them would have been able to block it. However, before the 2 adepts could breathe a sigh of relief, their previous worries were immediately confirmed. A scream came from not far away. When the 2 of them looked over, they saw that Li Hui, who had previously been humiliated by Lu Ping, was now flying back. At the same time, beads of blood spilled from his ribs. The Netherwater sword flashed and disappeared outside the 5 elements formation. Just as Lu Ping had surrounded Laozu of Rong Mountain with the sword formation, he even had the energy to spare to take care of the Hutu clan adepts outside the 5 elements formation. At this time, the Hutu clan was really a little scared. Although Jinling seemed to be alone now, every one of his subordinates was really good. The strength of each of those demon cultivators was 1 or 2 times stronger than the Hutu clan adepts of the same level. If they went all out, they could even block 2 or 3 adepts of the same level. Even so, they were already so powerful. It was said that these were only the adepts that Jinling had sent to be the vanguard. If the rest of Jinling came, what would happen? As the saying goes, what you fear will happen. Just as many of the adepts of the Hutu clan began to realize that it was not wise to provoke a sect like Jinling, the 6 flowing lights in the sky were already flying towards them. "Hey! Who dares to behave atrociously in Jinling?" A loud shout exploded from the sky, and then the sound waves rolled towards them, causing many of the core forging adepts of the Hutu clan to turn pale. Their bodies swayed, and they almost fell from the sky. The faces of everyone in the Hutu clan changed. As the flowing lights neared, especially the first 3 bright lights, it was obvious that they were Dharma adepts. The first ray of flowing light flew over, and a giant axe flew out from it. With just one blow, the mid-Dharma adept of the Hutu clan, who was pressuring the Samling, was sent flying back dozens of feet. When he came to a stop, his face was flushed, and it was obvious that he had been injured by the blow. The giant axe flew back and landed in the hands of a seductive woman. Who else could it be but Qinghu? The other two rays of flowing light landed and immediately joined the battle, blocking the two early Dharma adepts of the Huta clan. They were Qinghu and Qinglang. The three rays of flowing light behind them immediately joined the battle as well. They were also the remaining three of the Green Fox 9 bandits who had not yet reached the Dharma stage. Although there were only 6 of the Green Fox 9 bandits left, the arrival of these 6 people instantly turned the tide of the battle. The Huta clan no longer had the momentum they had before. The previous shout was Qinghu's newly mastered bloodline ability, Tiger's Roar. Seeing that the Huta clan was slowly closing in, and the two sides were starting to face each other along the 5 elements formation, which was about to break, Qinghu looked up at the sky above the station and laughed. If it weren't for these words, we wouldn't have found this place so quickly. In the sky above the Jinling station, the words, North Sea Jinling Station, which had been formed by Lu Ping's qi, had not been affected much by the battle. It still hung above the station like a huge flag, and could be seen clearly from dozens of miles away. Although the Huta clan had the advantage in numbers, Jinling's side suddenly had 3 more Dharma adepts, and none of them were weak. Although they had fewer people, if they really fought, Jinling's 5 elements formation would not be able to hold, and the Huta clan would definitely be the ones to die. Both sides had come for the sake of annihilating the evil Luo army. If they were to really have internal strife and fight each other to the death for the sake of a base, then it would truly not be worth it, and they would incur the ridicule of the other sects for no reason. Everyone, the second-generation disciple of the Huta clan, stepped forward and was about to say something when he saw several rays of flowing light flying towards them from the sky. The female cultivator stood beside the male cultivator and said, "Nowadays, the 9 mystical towers territory is like a gathering of heroes. It would be strange if no one came to watch after little Lu caused such a big commotion. However, little Lu seems to be doing this on purpose. Is he trying to kill the chicken to warn the monkey?" The male cultivator smiled and said, "That's right. You saw it on our way here. All the good places have been surrounded by arrays. Look at the terrain here. It's not any worse than those big sections. It's just that the area is a little smaller, but it's just right for our sect. However, good places have many wolves but little meat. If we chase away the Huda sect, other sects might come looking for trouble. Therefore, little Lu is simply beating the Hutu sect into a sorry state. If other sects want to cause trouble, they will naturally have to think twice. This can be considered as putting an end to this once and for all." Lu Ping didn't have the intention to kill, but he had made up his mind to humiliate the Huda sect and show those big sects who came late, so that they would give up on the idea of attacking Jinling's territory as soon as possible. Therefore, after trapping Rong Mountain Laozu with the sword array only focused on the first tribulation spirit treasure above Rong Mountain Laozu's head. At this time, Rong Mountain Laozu was also anxious. Although he was trapped in the sword array by Lu Ping, he could still clearly see what was happening outside. A large number of Zhenling's reinforcements had arrived. If the Huda sect had been a little hesitant before, they now didn't even have the right to challenge the Huta sect anymore. Looking at the people who had arrived at Zhenling, excluding Qinyu, Qingang, and the Green Fox 9 bandits, the 2 mid-Dharma adepts at the front were Tian Fan and Tian Shui, the 2 mid-Dharma adepts. When these two joined forces, they wouldn't even lose to a grand practitioner. It was just that now, in front of Lu Ping, who was able to beat up a grand practitioner while only at the mid-Dharma stage, the two's previous achievements were more or less overshadowed. At this time, there was also a mid-Dharma adept whose aura was still unstable. It was obvious that he had just advanced to the mid-Dharma stage. At this time, he was walking forward to negotiate with the Huta sect adepts. This was Tian Shan Laozu, who held an important position among the second generation of Zhenling's disciples. Besides these 3 mid-Dharma adepts, there were also 4 early Dharma adepts among the tens of people in Zhenling. They were Tian Tian, Lu Tianyuan, Ji Tian Xin, and Lu Ping's second senior sister, Li Tianru. They were all third-generation adepts who had advanced to the Dharma stage in Zhenling. The remaining 30 or so mid and late Dharma adepts were also the elites among the third and fourth generation of Jinling's disciples. If these people really joined forces to fight, there was a real possibility that the entire Huta sect would be wiped out. At this time, Rongshan Laozu could also see that the person in front of him did not necessarily want to kill him. Instead, he wanted him to suffer a big loss in front of everyone as a way to establish his dominance. Rongshan Laozu was a great late Dharma adept, and he was also a famous great theurgy in the world of practitioners. How could he be willing to let others step on his shoulders? Rongshan made up his mind, and a purple gold mountain hammer appeared in his hand. This was an authentic second tribulation spirit treasure. The entire Huta sect had only accumulated 2 second tribulation spirit treasures over the past 20,000 years. One was in the hands of his senior brother, and the other was specially given to him by his senior brother in order to make it stand out in the battle against the declining clans. Originally, the great ancestor of the Rong Mountain sect was planning to use this treasure as his trump card, which would allow him to show off his power in the Devil Luo War. However, he didn't expect that this treasure would be forced out before the Devil Luo War even started. Lu Ping had seen a lot of First Tribulation Spirit treasures, and there were also quite a few Second Tribulation Spirit treasures. He once had one in his possession, and now that it had passed the Third Lightning Tribulation, it had become a pure Yang Spirit treasure. However, even at Lu Ping's level, the appearance of spirit treasures had become a common occurrence. Compared to First Tribulation Spirit treasures, the number of Second Tribulation Spirit treasures was still very small. Those Second Tribulation Spirit treasures were usually controlled by great theurgy masters, at least at the level of great theurgy masters. Moreover, the great theurgy masters that Lu Ping had seen who could control Second Tribulation Spirit treasures were usually from famous, holy lands, and large sections. Therefore, the frequency of Second Tribulation Spirit treasures was higher. But in fact, apart from these famous and large sects, Dharma adepts from other sects who could control a First Tribulation Spirit treasure were already very good. One only had to look at Lin Yu Laozu, a dignified pure Yang master, but he only had a First Tribulation Spirit treasure, the Jasper Wind Flute, in his hand. One would know how rare a Second Tribulation Spirit treasure was. Looking at Tian Kong Laozu, who was only at the mid-Dharma stage, when he wielded the Second Tribulation Spirit treasure, the mountain-splitting axe, one would know the real status of a Second Tribulation Spirit treasure in the world of cultivators. The Jinling sect had been passed down for tens of thousands of years. If it were not for Lu Ping, the sect would only have a Second Tribulation Spirit treasure left by Taishan Laozu as the most precious treasure of the sect. As soon as the mountain-splitting hammer appeared in Rongshan Laozu's hand, Lu Ping was surprised at first, and then his expression became much more serious. Rongshan Laozu swung the mountain-splitting hammer in his hand, and the space in front of him immediately became fragmented. The fragmented space extended for 300 to 500 feet in the direction where the mountain-splitting hammer struck. Along the way, the sword light that Lu Ping turned around was all swallowed by the fragmented space, and the originally smooth operation of the Sea of All Rivers technique suddenly became sluggish. Rongshan Laozu would not miss such an opportunity. The light under his feet flashed, and he was about to take the opportunity to escape. Lu Ping did not expect the mountain-splitting hammer to be so powerful. After all, Rongshan Laozu was a senior cultivator, and the Second Tribulation Spirit treasure in his hand was much more powerful than that of Tiankong Laozu, who was only at the middle Dharma plane. Instantly, a crack appeared in the Sea of All Rivers technique. However, how could Lu Ping let him go so easily? Seeing that Rongshan Laozu was about to escape, Rongshan Laozu inevitably relaxed a little. Right at this moment, Lu Ping snorted coldly, and Rongshan Laozu's ears suddenly heard a clap of thunder. Even though he was a senior cultivator, he was still shocked by Lu Ping's snort and felt dizzy, and his body couldn't help but stop moving. A fight between powerful cultivators would only last for a moment. Battles between powerful beings could only last for a split second. Once the Rong Mountain ancestor paused for a second, the sword formation of all rivers in the sea suddenly disappeared. The thin water-long sword transformed into a pair of flood dragons and hovered above the Rong Mountain ancestor's head. That mountain-sized spirit treasure instantly shattered under the Rong mountain ancestors' terrified gaze. Although Lu Ping did not want to kill Rongshan, he had made up his mind to teach the Huda school a good lesson. Although this first tribulation spirit treasure was extraordinary, it could not stand such a long time of being worn down by the thin water-flowing sword. Rongshan Laozu staggered out of the sword formation, and Lu Ping, who was standing aside, had already stopped fighting. Many Huda school practitioners on the side stepped forward one after another, but the disciples of Jinling school did not make things difficult for Rongshan Laozu and returned to Jinling's station one after another. Rongshan Laozu knew that he had lost today. He glanced at the disciples of Jinling school in the station. Although he was aware of what happened outside the sword formation, he was still shocked when he saw the power that Jinling school had displayed. Then, without saying a word, he left with the disciples of Huda school. Although Lu Ping already knew that Jinling school's practitioners had arrived, when he saw so many familiar faces of his school, even though Lu Ping had traveled outside for tens of years, he still felt very close to them. He hurriedly went up to greet Tian Fan, Tian Shui, Tian Shan, and the other elders of Laozu school. At the same time, he also exchanged greetings with his senior brothers, sisters, and junior disciples, and introduced Qin Yu and Qin Gang, the two disciples of Luo Xian school, to Jinling school. Chapter 1265. Although Lu Ping knew that Lu Tianling and Laozu would quickly send their cultivators to participate in this grand gathering of human cultivators, he didn't expect Jinling to arrive so quickly. Although Lu Ping and the large sects that received the news in advance began to occupy their encampments at the same time, Jinling's arrival was only a few days later than him. At this time, most of the medium-sized sects in the Middle Plains had not yet had the time to send their cultivators to the 9 Profound Tower, let alone the overseas sections. Even if the medium-sized sects in the North Sea received the news, they did not have a secret transmission array that led directly to the Middle Plains like Jinling. By the time they arrived at the Middle Plains, they would not even have a place to stand. Lu Ping was originally a bit confused, but after asking, he found out that Lu Tianyuan and Tian Tian had been traveling along the eastern coast of the Middle Plains for the past few years. They received the news from the Heavenly Moon sect, so they quickly notified the sect, which was why Jinling's reaction was so fast. However, he didn't expect that Jinling's relationship with the Heavenly Moon sect was already so close, which was a good thing. Speaking of the relationship between Jinling and the large sects in the Middle Plains, the Heavenly Moon sect was previously connected to the Heavenly Profound sect because of Lu Ping. This was also because Lu Ping had saved the Heavenly Profound sect's direct disciple. Moreover, the deeper reason for the establishment of this relationship was because of the Heavenly Profound sect's situation at the time. Establishing a relationship with Jinling itself was because of the Heavenly Profound sect's deep calculations. The fundamental reason for maintaining a relationship with the Heavenly Moon sect was that both sides were facing the attack of the Crystal Palace. The enemy of an enemy was naturally an ally. However, although the Crystal Palace was suppressing the rise of Jinling in the North Sea, they were more focused on expanding their sphere of influence in the Middle Plains. From this point of view, the pressure on the Heavenly Moon sect was actually greater. The reason why Jinling and the Heavenly Moon sect could be connected was because the Heavenly Moon sect and the Carefree sect had a deep relationship. Jinling's Tianqin Laozu was once an elder of the boudoir of the Carefree sect. As an alchemist, Tianqin Laozu had a very high status in the boudoir. Moreover, Heavenly Moon sect had once set up an outer clan in the North Sea. Later on, the clan was wiped out by the Crystal Palace. Lu Ping sent the only surviving girl of the clan to Heavenly Moon sect, which could be considered as forming a good relationship with the sect. From the encirclement of the 9 Profound Towers Mara, it seemed that the relationship between the Heavenly Moon sect and the Heavenly Moon sect was very successful. If Jinling wanted to become a large sect, then it had to cross the stormy ocean via a treasured ship and build a super long-distance teleportation array in another large sect in the Middle Plains. This process not only would the overseas sect be recognized by the Middle Plains, but it also meant that the two sects that built the super long-distance teleportation array would become allies. Jinling had to be serious about this choice. Although the heavenly profound sect had taken the initiative to look for them, there was no doubt that Jinling would not carelessly put all of its eggs in one basket. Instead, it would compare goods and repeatedly consider. However, from the looks of it now, these two large sects seemed to be very sincere. However, the heavenly profound sect had first been pressured by Wuxing school and the isolation of the other four holy lands, which caused the heavenly profound sect to have the intention to seek help from overseas. For this reason, the heavenly profound sect not only contacted Jinling, which was about to become a large sect, but also secretly contacted the Crystal Palace. However, the problem was that the current Wuxing school had no choice but to restrain themselves after the Battle of Luo Xian Mountain because they had made too many enemies. This also gave the heavenly profound sect a chance to breathe. Whether the heavenly profound sect would be as sincere to Jinling as before was a variable. On the other hand, because the heavenly moon sect had a common enemy with Jinling, it seemed more logical for the two to cooperate. Furthermore, this time, the heavenly moon sect had also shown enough sincerity by revealing the matter of the 9 profound tower to Jinling. More importantly, as an important supporter of the heavenly moon sect in resisting the Crystal Palace, the 9 profound tower had been besieged by Mara for more than 10 years. Even if they were freed from Mara's siege, they would most likely suffer a great loss. Without the 9 profound tower as a pillar, the heavenly moon sect would not be able to resist the overbearing Crystal Palace. There was another more important reason, and that was that the heavenly moon sect was separated by the stormy ocean and the East Sea, but was much further away from Jinling in the North Sea. In the encampment, Tian Fanlaozu and Tian Shuelaozu gave a general introduction of the current situation of Jinling. After that, they talked about the situation of the two sections. However, they wanted to seek advice from Lu Ping. Although Lu Ping was only a third-generation disciple, his position in Jinling was quite high. He already had the right to interfere with the decisions of the sect. This time, he had made such a big name for himself in the Middle Earth. Especially now that he had defeated many great practitioners, it could be said that he had already shocked the entire cultivation world. His position in Jinling would only rise further. However, Lu Ping's teacher was the leader of Jinling, so he naturally could not casually express his opinion. In reality, even Lu Ping himself could not decide which of the two sects to choose. However, what made Lu Ping happy was that Zhang Tianlin Laozu was already in seclusion. This meant that Zhang Tianlin Laozu had already pushed his level of practice to the peak of the mid-Dharma stage. Once he successfully passed the second lightning tribulation, then Jinling would welcome its second great practitioner of the late Dharma stage. At the same time, Jinling would truly have the right to aspire to become the leader of a large sect. Of course, when Tianlin Laozu advanced to the mid-Dharma stage, as well as his good friend Tian Xian and second senior sister Tian Ru successfully condensed their Dharma powers, Lu Ping also went up to congratulate them. Among the third generation of Jinling, there were many late core forging adepts who had hopes of breaking through to the Dharma stage. However, other than Tian Xian and Tian Ru, who had recently broken through, the somewhat impatient Xian Yong had also tried to condense his Dharma power. Unfortunately, he had failed at the last moment. Xian Yong himself had also lost his qi. Without 3 to 5 years of cultivation, he would not be able to accumulate enough energy to break through to the Dharma stage. In reality, it was not only Xian Yong. There were many other practitioners who had been at the peak of the core forging stage for longer than him, such as Xian Shang, Xian Kai, Xian Bei, Xian Lei, Xian Su, and Xian Xiang, who had all tried to break through to the Dharma stage. However, these people had all failed. After Jinling's Lu Tianping, Lu Tianyuan, and Tian Tian had successfully advanced to the Dharma stage, the third generation of Jinling's disciples were greatly encouraged, but at the same time, they were slowly infected with a layer of impetuous emotions. It was as if the Dharma stage, which was originally like a natural moat, had become less frightening. There were also feelings of jealousy, such as, if he can do it, why can't I? And so on. The third generation of Jinling's disciples, on the other hand, had set off a wave of craze to break through to the Dharma stage. However, the results were very disappointing. In this wave of craze, other than Li Xuanru and Ji Xianxian who had successfully condensed their Dharma power, the others had undoubtedly failed one after another. The consequences of failure were usually very serious. This was because breaking through to the Dharma stage required the practitioner to put in all their effort. Hence, once they failed, the price they had to pay was self-evident. Not only would a large amount of training resources be wasted, but the practitioner's vitality would also be greatly damaged. Like Xin Yong, it was already very fortunate that he had only delayed his breakthrough for 3 to 4 years. Even if he had to recuperate for 10 years or more, it was not impossible that his foundation would be damaged, and he would completely lose all hope of breaking through to the Dharma stage. Currently, among the 3 generations of Jinling's practitioners, the number of people who had advanced to the Dharma stage had already reached 17. If the outer sect elder, Xiang Lu Laozu, who wielded the vast sea bell, and the 3rd-generation practitioner, Yin Tianchu, who had been expelled from the sect, the number of Dharma adepts in Jinling had reached a terrifying 19. The number of Dharma adepts at this level was already more than the number of ordinary large sections. In terms of strength, they were no longer weaker than ordinary large sects like the Huta sect. Furthermore, other than the great Dharma adepts, the proportion of 2nd and 3rd generation practitioners among the Dharma adepts was also becoming more and more reasonable. It could be said that although there were twists and turns in the development of Zhenling, it was indeed moving in a good direction. The arrival of the practitioners in Zhenling had greatly increased the speed of the construction of the station, especially the half-baked 5 elements formation that Lu Ping had previously set up. At this time, under the arrangement of the Zhenling formation masters, it was gradually being perfected. However, at this time, Lu Ping's attention had already flown to Black Fox, who was directing a few formation masters to set up the large formation. He did not expect that Black Fox would also come this time. When Lu Ping first met her, he had already given her the complete array formation inheritance of the 5 elements sect that he obtained from Golden Cicada ancestor. Then, Taoist Mystic Fox immediately followed the detailed explanation of the 5 elements sect's array formation inheritance and started to reconstruct and perfect the array formation in the encampment. Black Fox was now also a cultivator in the late stage of the core forging realm. Over the years, she had been learning formations and restoring the formation runes of the treasure ship's wreckage with spiritual master Xinshin. Her attainments in formations had also reached the level of a formation grandmaster. Lu Ping's formation inheritance happened to solve her urgent need. Perhaps this was the opportunity for her to become a formation grandmaster. Xian, who was talented in array formations, but that was all. Compared to Deng Ming, the other array formation grandmaster that Lu Ping had recruited into the sect, Xian, who was still a far cry from him. Deng Ming's talent in array formations was more groundbreaking, and he had his own style. He was someone who could become an array formation grandmaster of his generation. On the other hand, Taoist Master Black Fox was much more disciplined. Her attainments in formations were more rigid. Therefore, she needed to study the complete inheritance system of formations, and not put it in a place like the Nether Void formation so that she could comprehend the mysteries of formations on her own. The two of them had a lot to say when they met, but it was not the right time. After greeting each other, they parted amidst the laughter of the formation masters. Lu Ping had seen a few of his disciples among the core forging realm cultivators who came to the central region from Zhenling. He had not seen them for many years. He did not know how their self-cultivation was going and whether they had gone astray on the path of cultivation. Chapter 1266. Now, even the 5th generation of Jinling sect's disciples had begun to mature. However, the disciples under Lu Ping's tutelage had turned the difficult process of becoming Lu Ping's disciple into an unwritten rule. At the very least, they still didn't have a disciple to inherit their heritage. It wasn't that there weren't people in the sect urging them to accept disciples, and it wasn't that they didn't want to accept disciples. It was just that in their eyes, Lu Ping was only a late core forging realm cultivator with his current achievements. They were far inferior to their teacher, so how could they be qualified to teach others? Lu Ping had 3 direct disciples, Wang Xuanqi, Tian Xianyue, and Du Xianluo. There were also 3 in-name disciples, Fang Xianwei, Fang Xuanxia, and Zheng Xuanwu. Wang Xuanqi's cultivation was at the 6th stage of the core forging stage, and he stood out among the fourth generation of Jinling's disciples. Tian Xinyue didn't come with the sect, but he was an alchemist, so his cultivation progress was slower. As for Du Jialuo, he had advanced to the mid-stage of the core forging stage and was only one step away from advancing to the fifth stage. Among the three in-name disciples, only Xing Xuanwu came. His cultivation had broken through to the mid-stage of the core forging stage, and he was the same as Du Jialuo. Among the three in-name disciples, Wang Xuanqi already had the qualifications to advance to the late stage of the core forging stage. However, he remembered Lu Ping's instructions and didn't rush to smelt the heaven and earth spiritual objects. Instead, after advancing to the sixth stage of the core forging stage, he began to follow his own path of cultivation to strengthen his foundation. Originally, Wang Xuanqi's cultivation was considered the fastest among the fourth-generation disciples. However, Wang Xuanqi's cultivation had stagnated at the core forging stage 6th layer for several years without any progress. On the other hand, there were many talented disciples among the fourth generation of Jinling's sect who had caught up to him. However, before these people could be complacent, they suddenly realized that although Wang Xuanqi's cultivation progress had slowed down, his strength was getting more and more daunting. The cultivators who were supposed to lose to Wang Xuanqi after 30 moves couldn't even last 10 moves after advancing to the sixth stage of the core forging stage. Du Xuanluo's aptitude was the strongest among Lu Ping's disciples. However, he had never displayed any outstanding talent in front of others. His cultivation speed could only be considered above average. Among the fourth generation of Jinling's sect's disciples, his cultivation speed wasn't particularly outstanding, but it wasn't particularly eye-catching. However, only Wang Xuanqi knew how difficult it was to deal with this third junior brother of his. Du Xinluo cultivated an earth elemental skill, and the density of the true essence in his body was something that Wang Xuanqi had never seen before in his life. Earth elemental skill was good for defense, and Wang Xuanqi was famous for his sharp swordsmanship in Jinling's sect. However, when the two of them fought, even though Wang Xuanqi's cultivation was far superior to Du Xuanluo's, it would take more than 50 rounds to break his defense. It could be seen how difficult it was to deal with Du Xinluo. Du Xuanluo's cultivation method was slightly different from Wang Xuanqi's. Wang Xuanqi's cultivation method was to push his cultivation to a certain bottleneck at a relatively fast speed, and then start to consolidate his foundation. When the time was right, he would break through the bottleneck in one go, causing his cultivation to increase by leaps and bounds again. Moreover, he didn't have to worry about his foundation being unstable. Du Xinluo, on the other hand, cultivated steadily from the beginning. His cultivation progress wasn't fast, but every step he took forward made his foundation extremely solid. In the early stages, his cultivation progress was very inconspicuous, but as his cultivation increased, more and more people began to gradually fall behind because of their unstable foundation and other various reasons. At this time, Du Jialuo's steady progress was very eye-catching. However, because he was the direct disciple of the Water Sword Immortal, Lu Tianping, this progress seemed to be reasonable in the eyes of everyone. Du Xinluo had kept a low profile among the fourth-generation disciples of Jinling. However, compared to Zhang Xuanwu, Du Xuanluo's identity as the direct disciple of Soundwave Manor was also eye-catching. On the other hand, up until now, most of the people in Jinling still thought that this cultivator who patrolled Huangli Island every day was only an outer court cultivator of Jinling. Zhang Xuanwu's aptitude wasn't outstanding when compared to Du Xinluo and Wang Xuanqi, but Zhang Xuanwu's strength lay in his diligence and persistence towards cultivation. This was also the reason why Lu Ping took him in after he gave him the opportunity to enter Jinling to cultivate. This disciple was extremely similar to Lu Ping in many aspects. Just as Lu Ping was teaching a few of his disciples, a hurried whistling sound rang out. Lu Ping's expression froze, and he had no choice but to stop teaching. After giving a few instructions to his 3 disciples, he had already broken through the void and disappeared. Outside Jinling Station, Lu Ping's figure appeared outside the formation shield that had yet to be completely set up. At this time, Tian Fan, Tian Shui, Tian Shan, and the other Dharma adepts of Jinling had already arrived. Not far away, a beam of light shot over. It was Ji Tianxian riding a flying puppet bird. Seeing the crowd from afar, he said, "There's an army of Mara going up the Qingming River. It looks like they're coming for us. Tian Yuan, Tian, and the two Qin brothers are trying to stop the Mara army along the way. However, it looks like they won't be able to hold them off for long." Tian Shan Laozu asked in a low voice, "How's their strength?" Ji Tianxian heaved a sigh of relief and said, "We've found at least 4 Jade Mara and close to 10 Blood Mara." Everyone's expression changed. For Jade Mara, joining forces was equivalent to the strength of 2 great adepts. In addition to the 10 Blood Mara, their strength had already far surpassed the current Zhenling. Moreover, what Tian Xin and the others had found might not be the entire number of Mara army. In the station, Mystical Fox Enlightened was flying over. When Tian Fanlaozu saw her, he asked, "How long will it take for the station's great formation to be set up?" Mystical Fox Enlightened was stunned for a moment. She glanced at Lu Ping and said, "It'll probably take another 2 hours." Tian Fanlaozu said, "We have to try our best to delay this group of Mara. At the very least, we have to wait until the station's great formation is set up. Otherwise, even if we manage to repel this group of Mara, I'm afraid we'll suffer heavy losses." Lu Ping also said, "Get the disciples to set up the Dao soldier formation and prepare for battle. Speed up the installation of the station's defensive formation. This disciple will first go and meet this group of Mara army." Tian Fan, Tian Shui, and Tian Fanlaozu wanted to go as well. However, Lu Ping said, "However, Senior Uncle Tian Fan can go alone. The station still needs the 2 senior granduncles to oversee it. The arrival of this group of Mara army is very suspicious. If there's some small fry taking the opportunity to cause trouble, we'll be fully prepared." Tian Shuelaozu's expression changed. "You're saying that this group of Mara army was intentionally lured here by someone to frame us?" Lu Ping muttered to himself, "There's no harm in being prepared. In any case, we must not fall into their trap of luring us away." Lu Ping was indeed worried. Zhenling was, after all, an overseas sect. Furthermore, it was an unknown medium-sized sect. Putting aside the fact that they arrived early, the moment they arrived in the Central Plains, they displayed such a strong performance because of him. Furthermore, the strength they displayed was even stronger than ordinary large sections. This inevitably aroused the resentment of other sections. If someone really lured over the Mara army, with Tian Fan and Tian Shui, who were comparable to grand cultivators overseeing the station, they wouldn't have to worry about their nest being raided. Tian Xian and Tian Ru followed the 2 Laozu and stayed behind to guard the camp. As for Lu Ping, he brought Lu Hai and Laozu along the Qingming River to meet up with Tian Yuan, and the Qin brothers. Instead, his gaze was fixed on the Qingming River a few miles away. There, a group of Mara's army was traveling up the Qingming River. Lu Ping had already sensed the hidden aura of Azura. Chapter 1267. To put it bluntly, the foundation of a sect was the preparation before it could be unleashed. Any sect would always be racking their brains for the growth of their own sect's foundation. However, the foundation had to be used, but there were only 2 types of times when it could be used. One was when the sect was in danger, and the other was when it was about to rise. However, under normal circumstances, the sects in the world of practitioners would combine these 2 situations together. The reason for this was the once-in-a-thousand-years Mara disaster. The rise of every sect would have a big or small impact on the order of the world of practitioners. This was because, regardless of whether the rise of a sect was successful or not, it would inevitably be met with a bloodbath. Even if it was successful, it would be greatly weakened and enter a new period of weakness. Without hundreds of years of cultivation, it would be impossible to recover. However, these hundreds of years of cultivation rarely overlapped with the disaster of Mara. Once the sect was faced with such a situation again, it was very likely that it would not be able to avoid it. However, the arrival of the disaster of Mara would also require the sect to unleash its own foundation as much as possible. It was undoubtedly impossible for a sect to consecutively accumulate so much in such a short period of time. At the very least, it was an extremely risky thing to do. Hence, when the disaster of Mara descended, taking the opportunity to complete the rise of the sect became a more reliable method. After thousands of years of accumulation, when the disaster of Mara was successfully unleashed, a medium-sized sect would usually be able to cultivate more than 10 Dharma adepts in a short period of time. Once the disaster of Mara was over, if the sect did not suffer too many losses, it would often usher in a golden opportunity to rise again. Furthermore, the rise of the sect under such circumstances, other than facing the disaster of Mara, would rarely be met with the suppression and destruction of the original order of the world of practitioners. This was because when the disaster of Mara descended, all the sects would not be able to take care of themselves. Naturally, they would not be able to care about whether other sects would take the opportunity to rise. To put it bluntly, this kind of foundation was the intentional accumulation of the sect, but in reality, it could indeed be easily controlled. At the very least, it could be controlled to explode on the eve of the arrival of the Mara calamity. Just like Jinling's sect, almost 20 Dharma adepts had suddenly appeared. Not only Jinling, but all the other sects would also have a large increase in the number of Dharma adepts at this time. It was just that because each sect had different accumulations, the amount of energy that erupted when the disaster of Mara descended was different. In fact, this kind of eruption was usually clearly differentiated. Which cultivators advanced due to their own strength, and which ones took a shortcut. Naturally, the masters of the various sects had a tacit understanding about this. Even the cultivators themselves were aware of this. Even the cultivators who took shortcuts usually had to pay a higher price for the sect. This was because these people would not even have the qualifications to advance to the Dharma stage in the past. Now that they had such an opportunity, they had to pay the price of being cannon fodder. When danger descended, they would be the first wave of people to rush forward. And to the sects, although these people had reached the Dharma stage, they were not the true successors of the sect. This was because after they had advanced to the Dharma stage, they had no possibility of advancing further. The reason why the sects still supported them was so that they could protect the true elites of the sect. Therefore, after the Great Mara calamity, the number of Dharma adepts in the world of cultivation would drop to a whole new level. However, other than some special circumstances, most of the Dharma adepts who survived were the true elites of their sects. And in Jinling, the people who played the role of cannon fodder now seemed to be the first generation of the sect and a considerable number of second-generation cultivators. And the essence of the sect's legacy was undoubtedly the third generation of direct disciples who had successfully advanced to the Dharma stage by relying on their own strength and training. Of course, among the third generation of Jinling adepts, there would also be people who had lost the opportunity to advance under normal circumstances and had no choice but to take shortcuts. And there would probably be more of them. And their fate would be the same as the second generation of adepts. They would also be the vanguard to protect the legacy of Jinling. However, if Jinling wanted to successfully rise as a complete sect in the process of the disaster of Mara, then it could only do its best to reflect the accumulated power of the sect in the explosive growth of the Dharma adepts. It also had to do its best to preserve the number of Dharma adepts in the process of resisting the disaster of Mara. Lu Ping faced the army of Mara moving upstream. Naturally, he knew that regardless of whether this was a secret plot, it was a test that Jinling was facing. And what Jinling could do was to try its best to preserve its own strength and defeat the invading army of Mara. Although Tianshan Laozu's level of practice had not yet stabilized, in the face of a few blood Mara, and with the mountain-splitting axe in hand, Lu Ping did not have to worry that the cautious and steady Tianshan Laozu would fail miserably. Furthermore, there were 5 Dharma adepts beside him. In a flash, Lu Ping had already arrived at the back of the battle. The purple and gold clouds behind Lu Ping grew, and the Dharma of the dragon appeared in the clouds. Finally, it hovered above Lu Ping's head. A giant dragon head flashed in the clouds. At this time, Lu Ping shouted again. Drawl, the purple and gold clouds headed towards the direction of the army of Mara. As Lu Ping shouted, it formed a whirlpool, and a steady stream of water began to gather in the whirlpool. At this time, the army of Mara suddenly realized that the spirit chi of heaven and earth within a radius of 3 miles had long been under Lu Ping's control. As Lu Ping performed his magic, the spirit chi of heaven and earth turned into countless tentacles or ropes that wrapped around each of the Mara's bodies. Mara's devouring. Although the army of Mara was surprised by Lu Ping's method, they were not worried. To them, the spirit chi of heaven and earth was originally a nourishment for them, and they could absorb as much as they wanted. However, as they absorbed the spirit chi of heaven and earth into their bodies, they suddenly found that the spirit chi of heaven and earth could not be refined at all. Instead, it formed needles of spirit chi that rampaged through Mara's body, turning the world upside down. The water vapor within a radius of 3 miles had gathered in the auspicious clouds above Lu Ping's head, and the needles of spirit chi were expelled from Mara's body. However, they never noticed that as these needles of spirit chi were expelled from their bodies, streams of water vapor also dissipated, and then were absorbed by the whirlpool of the auspicious clouds. Neither the blood Azura nor the jade Mara noticed anything strange, but the Azura hiding in the center of Mara's army had already noticed something was wrong. After a violent roar, the entire Mara's army fell into chaos again. A part of the Mara's army rushed towards Lu Ping, seemingly trying to interrupt the spell he was casting, while another part of the Mara's army gathered around the Azura. It seemed that the Azura could break Lu Ping's magic, but the area it could control was limited. It could not gather many Maras in a radius of several feet. Before the Mara's army that was rushing towards Lu Ping could reach Lu Ping, the little Mara, who was equivalent to the blood condensation realm, quickly turned into dried corpses due to the loss of water in their bodies. Immediately after, the skin of the big Mara's body began to crack, and they fell to the ground amidst the continuous howling. The Mara's army became more and more chaotic. Even the blood Azuras became listless due to the loss of water vapor in their bodies. Chapter 1268. In Jinling's encampment, after Lu Ping and the rest had left, a few Jinling's array masters had helped Mystical Fox Spiritual Master embed the 5 elements ring into a 5 elements array plate. With that, the construction speed of the encampment's great array immediately increased by a lot. The spiritual chi ripples from the Qingming River downstream became clearer and more intense. The entire Jinling's people immediately became more alert. It was obvious that Lu Ping and the rest had already engaged in battle with Mara's army. They wanted to delay Mara's army before the encampment's great array was completed. Under the command of Li Tianru and Ji Tianxian, more than a dozen third-generation elite disciples of late-stage core forging realm each led a team of Jinling sect cultivators and began to set up the 3 talents and 5 elements Dao soldier formation, just in case. However, just when everyone's attention was attracted by the intense spiritual chi ripples from the Qingming River downstream and Mara's miserable cries, a strange laughter suddenly rang out from the encampment. A black ray of light silently appeared in the sky above the encampment where Jinling's disciples were gathering. Both of his hands pressed down in the air, and 2 strange rays of light flashed past the surface of his palms. A violent wave caused the surrounding space to tremble, descending towards the heads of the Jinling cultivators. A violent and ferocious aura instantly filled the sky, causing the expressions of everyone in Jinling to change. A late-stage Dharma adept, he was actually shameless enough to directly attack the gathered core forging cultivators of Jinling. Presumptuous! Tian Shui Laozu shouted angrily. In the blink of an eye, he and Tian Fan Laozu appeared in the encampment. The wind-snow double fan fanned, one with wind while the other with snow. The 2 fans combined harmoniously, instantly dispelling the sneak attacker's attack layer by layer. The attacker's attack missed and was about to attack again. However, Tian Shui and Tian Fan, the 2 Laozu, had already leapt into the air, taking the initiative to attack first. For a moment, the great cultivator was actually unable to attack. Although the wind-snow double fan was only a first tribulation spiritual treasure, when the 2 fans combined harmoniously, its power was not too far off from a second tribulation spiritual treasure. In addition, Tian Shui and Tian Fan had been Laozu's cultivation companions for hundreds of years. Their minds were already connected. When the two of them combined harmoniously, they were actually able to completely suppress the great cultivator in front of them. However, the two Laozu also noticed that although the cultivator in front of them was in the late transcendence realm, the aura around him was somewhat strange. It seemed like he had just advanced to the late transcendence realm not too long ago. However, he gave the two of them a familiar feeling, but they just couldn't recall who he was. Tian Shui Laozu could see that the person in front of her was clearly not familiar with his own cultivation. His strength was still quite a distance away from a veteran great cultivator. Seeing that they had forced this person to retreat to the outskirts of Zhenling's encampment, she was about to unleash her full strength to teach this great cultivator a lesson. Unexpectedly, Tian Fan Laozu, who was beside her, suddenly signaled for her to hold on. Tian Shui Laozu was startled. What a close shave. If this was the opponent's plan to lure the tiger away from the mountain, she almost fell for it this time. Tian Fan Laozu, who was at the side, spoke in a deep voice, "You are a great cultivator, and you must be a famous person in the cultivation world. Yet, you sneak-attacked our sect's core Forging Realm disciples. Aren't you afraid of being ridiculed by others in the cultivation world?" The great cultivator's entire body was shrouded in black fog, causing others to be unable to see his true appearance. When he heard Tian Fan Laozu's words, he let out a weird laugh and pounced towards Tian Fan and Tian Shui once again. "Come at me." Tian Fan Laozu didn't show any signs of weakness. With a sweep of the fan in his hand, Tian Shui Laozu, who was at the side, immediately understood and wanted to assist from the side. Unexpectedly, when the great cultivator soared into the sky, another figure flew out from behind him. This time, it was heading straight for Zhenling's encampment. "Not good, there's another person on the other side. He's a great cultivator." Tian Shui Laozu was horrified. She could no longer care about joining hands with Tian Fan Laozu. With a spin of the snow fan in her hand, she fanned towards the other person who rushed out. Dong! Bang! 2 consecutive sounds could be heard. Tian Fan Laozu was slightly better off. The strange great cultivator's true strength was limited. He was only able to force Tian Fan Laozu back. On the other side, Tian Shui Laozu wasn't as lucky. The second great cultivator who appeared seemed to want to attack Zhenling's encampment. In reality, he was taking advantage of the time when Tian Shui Laozu was rushing over to rescue him to suddenly attack her with a divine ability. This second great cultivator was originally a true great cultivator. When he attacked, Tian Shui Laozu was caught unprepared. Instantly, she suffered a huge loss. The qi and blood in her body were in turmoil, and she was nearly heavily injured to the point of vomiting blood. Tian Fan Laozu hurriedly went to support Tian Shui Laozu. The two of them joined hands to confront the two great cultivators. Currently, Zhenling was obviously at a disadvantage. The newly appeared great cultivator stopped after a single attack. He basically had no intention of attacking a low-leveled cultivator like Zhenling. If it wasn't for the fact that the two Laozu, Tian Fan and Tian Shui, could be considered as veteran mid-Dharma adepts and had sufficient experience in fighting against their enemies, while the other party had misgivings about their identities and didn't dare to reveal too many of their techniques, the two Laozu would have long been defeated. Seeing the two Laozu retreating in mid-air, Li Tianru and Ji Tianxian were extremely anxious. However, they knew that even if the two of them rushed forward, it would be useless in front of the two great cultivators. Right now, they could only hurry up and form the 3 talents and 5 elements Dao Soldier Formation. With the power of the Dao Soldier Formation, they might be able to fight against the two great cultivators. However, they were afraid that the two Laozu would not be able to hold on until the Dao Soldier Formation was formed. Although Li Tianru and Ji Tianxian were anxious, they still didn't dare to show the slightest bit of panic. They forced themselves to calm down and orderly commanded the cultivators under them to get into position, hoping to activate the Dao Soldier Formation as soon as possible. Although Tian Fan Laozu was being suppressed by the strange great cultivator in front of him, the great cultivator's strength was clearly not comparable to the other great cultivator. Therefore, although Tian Fan Laozu was in a sorry state, he was still able to hold on. On the other side, Tian Shui Laozu had already been beaten by the great cultivator to the point of vomiting blood. However, Tian Shuelaozu didn't dare to retreat anymore. Behind her was Zhenling's encampment, which was slowly being strengthened. If she were to retreat again, Zhenling's encampment would really be opened up to the two of them. That great cultivator could clearly see through Tian Shuelaozu's determination to die. He sneered and formed a seal. The jade belt on his waist suddenly lit up, just as a cloud of mist soared before the great cultivator's divine ability could be formed. A sharp child's voice suddenly rang out, "Kill!" A small person the size of a foot pierced through the air. In his hand was a small willow wooden sword. A cold light flickered from the tip of the sword, aiming straight for the great cultivator's eyes. Secret technique of splitting the heavens, external body incarnation. The great cultivator let out a strange cry. He tilted his head back and dodged Lu Xiaoping's attack. However, the divine ability that was gradually forming in his hand was interrupted by this sudden attack, saving Tian Shuelaozu from the hopeless situation. Tian Shuelaozu originally had a fiery temper. After suffering such a huge loss, she became even more furious. With a loud shout, she wanted to fight to the death with the great cultivator. In addition, with Lu Xiaoping's cultivation gradually approaching that of a normal mid-Dharma adepts, the great cultivator couldn't do anything to the two of them for the time being. Lu Xiaoping was originally left behind by Lu Ping to protect himself before he left the campsite. After Lu Xiaoping had absorbed a small portion of the spiritual energy of one of the 5 spirits in the treasured cauldron of heaven and earth, his own aptitude had increased tremendously. After this period of meticulous nurturing by Lu Ping, this avatar's strength was already no weaker than a peak early Dharma adept. In addition, it was an avatar that disregarded life and death. If it continued to pester the opponent, even a mid-Dharma adept would have a headache. The great cultivator who was being pestered by Tian Shuelaozu and Lu Xiaoping was anxious. This time, they had taken a huge risk by sneaking an attack on Zhenling. Originally, they wanted to take advantage of the situation. However, they didn't expect that Zhenling was already prepared. Furthermore, he was so difficult to deal with. "Hence," he shouted, "what are you waiting for? What are you waiting for?" Tian Shui and Tian Fanlaozu's expressions changed. The opponent had actually hidden someone and hadn't made a move yet. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.